Time answer.
On microphone? They hear you? We're not streaming yet.
Okay,
but
time
we're
answer.
recording. Okay. 9:01.
Robin Campbell.
Ramiro Chavez, County Manager.
Thomasina Cooper, Assistant to Time Answer.
Bonita Momar, Clerk of the Board.
And on the bench?
Mayor Porter, Public Information.
All right, thank you. And we're going to start with this agenda, and we'll review the Board of County Commissioners' agenda, draft agenda for today, this afternoon's meeting at 2 o'clock. And we'll start with that, because then we're going to move into the... we also have a public hearing this afternoon, don't we?
That is correct, Commissioner. And perhaps on your agenda, also item number 2 is to review the agenda for next Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019.
That's on here, yeah.
So when I drafted this agenda, we did have a very short agenda for next week. So I'll move those items for this afternoon. So I will request the board to cancel next week's meeting. It's just that time of the year, we don't have that many items. And
Okay.
I don't think it was adequate for you to meet just to consider one item.
And do you have the information to brief us when we get to it on the public hearing at 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start with the BoCC meeting for this afternoon at 2 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order at 2, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Gary Edwards, approval of the agenda and the board meeting minutes from June 11, and get right into presentations. First one is Public Works introduction of new Fleet Services Manager.
Yes, Commissioner. Monica Gorman, who is serving as the interim Central Services Director, she is the Solid Waste Manager. She will be introducing Bruce Rohrbaugh as the new Fleet Services Manager. He was promoted within. And that will be a great opportunity for you to hear a little bit more about himself, and also give you the opportunity to welcome him into his new position.
Wonderful. Anything? No. All right. Next is Public Works. Lacey City Limits to Carpenter Road Project presentation by Matt.
Yeah, this presentation is really a strategy to continue to reach out to the citizens related to the upcoming project on Mullen Road. That is from the Lacey City Limits to Carpenter Road. As you heard in a briefing maybe 2 months ago, road construction is going to take close to 2 years, and it's going to cause a lot of impacts to the citizens. So this is an attempt to, again, inform the public of the upcoming construction season. The staff from Public Works have been coordinated with all the school districts and the fire districts and the first responders just to make sure that they are informed as to the different closures and perhaps delays this project is going to cause to the local community.
Okay, anything?
No.
That impacts the that mobile home park on Carpenter Road as well, or on Mullen rather, that has the issue getting in and out of traffic. You know which one I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's from the city limits down to
This to Carpenter.
to Carpenter, and on Mullen, just about the city limits, there's a mobile home park.
So if it's within those limits, certainly they will be affected.
Are they putting a roundabout in? Do you remember that? What they're doing there? They're doing something there to help the.
Are you talking about the Marvin Road, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe I'm talking Marvin Road, right?
Because the Marvin Road, there is a.
Okay.
It's affected by that Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
I believe it's Marvin.
Is that
yeah,
perhaps?
yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you.
But if there's any mobile home park within the limits of this project, certainly will be affected.
I'm not sure there is now.
Yeah.
You guys sorted me out. Thank you. Next is opportunity for the public to address the board.
Yes, you probably may have some public testimony related to the courthouse. And also you may receive some public testimony related to the ICE agent arrest incident that we had here last Thursday at the courthouse. So that's probably what I can expect this afternoon.
Anything? Anything?
Courthouse. Mr. Pettit, I think, will be here.
Okay. We have information regarding that in case somebody does come. We're not going to respond, of course, to public comment, but do we have information from that incident last Thursday here at the court?
Yeah, yes, I'm gathering information. If you like, I can give you.
Are you going to give it to us later on,
Right now, I don't have it on the agenda, but I can give you what I know
if you don't mind?
right now.
Thank you.
So my understanding of the issue was just about 11:30 on Thursday, last Thursday, in the morning. What appears to be three ICE agents made an arrest. What I believe it was an individual who was doing a court proceedings in Superior Court. And so I'm trying to piece all this together. I'm getting video footage of the security point at the Superior Court. And what appears to be that just about 10:30, maybe an agent or two went to the security point and they identified themselves as agents, at least one. And again, the video footage is going to give you more details. And that individual, the agent, proceeded to look at the calendar of the proceedings of the court and identified this individual. That as soon as this individual was done with his court proceedings, he followed him outside, and where they conducted the arrest, which has just happened here on the bottom of the flagpole. During that, apparently the individual was resisting arrest, which created a big commotion. He was with family members, where the security officers responded because of the commotion, as well as, I believe, a lot of people just came up. At that point, I believe the ICE agents, which they're wearing civilian clothing, identified themselves, and they proceeded to arrest the individuals and took him into an unmarked white truck. They have pieces of the video of that. We have a camera outside, and that camera didn't capture the moment of the arrest, but it certainly captures the time they took him into the vehicle and took him away. And again, I'm working in terms of the video footage from the security point at building number 2, Superior Court. And this individual was also a client from one of our public defenders. And the public defender at that point, after he conducted the business that he was at in court, then they separated, and apparently the public defender learned about that later on. This is what I know. I reached out to the sheriff's office, and as far as I know, nobody from the county contacted the ICE agents. And it appears the ICE agents came following this individual from the outside. And that's what I know at this point. Any questions on that?
Okay, any questions?
There was concern at a meeting I was at last night about the fact that this happened in the morning, but court personnel weren't notified. It was basically unknown to the rest of the court staff for the rest of the day. People didn't find out about it until the next day for the most part, whereas there was concern that court staff could have been sort of on the alert and being aware, and public defenders could have been warning their clients potentially or letting them know. So that seemed like a reasonable request, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I think it was, if there's anything for us to do in order to be prepared, obviously a federal agent is conducting their business, and it's difficult for any of us to do anything against it. It will be unlawful. But in any case, there's certainly at some point we'll probably have to go through a lessons learned. And if there's anything that we can do, I will bring that to your attention.
Do you have any questions or comments on that?
No.
You answered my questions about the location and whether they were plain clothes or uniform. But one remaining question, is the presiding judge or the court going to put some type of information out?
Well, my understanding is both courts are considering issuing a statement. And I don't know the content of that statement yet.
And this happened last Thursday?
Mm-hmm. Last Thursday, 11:30 in the morning.
It's only Tuesday. Tongue in cheek. Okay. Anything further on public comment we expect? Oh, okay. County manager's update.
Yes, I would like to provide an update in terms of two things. I will follow up with a public testimony that you received from Ms. Dilworth. And I have an item on your agenda today, item number 6, to go a little more in detail and see how we would like to respond to that public testimony. Also, I'd like to bring back the Ordinance 51308, which is authorized the county manager to ban the discharge of fireworks during the 4th of July holiday due to extreme weather fire danger conditions. I have been coordinating with the fire marshal, and the fire marshal has reached out to the fire district chiefs, as well as they have gone through the process of determining what DNR is considering this Thurston County and the fire danger, and at this point is considered low. And based on the forecast on the weather conditions, those conditions will not change before the 4th of July holiday. So at this point, I will not be taking any action related to this, and I will inform the public of that.
Anything?
No.
I hope the public's reading and watching and listening. We still get emails regarding that issue. Want to know what we're going to do.
Yeah. And also, if you can give me the floor for a couple minutes as part of my county manager's update. Gary Aiden, from Public Health Social Services, his last day is this Friday. So I'd like to take the time to acknowledge him this afternoon for the great service he has provided to the county, and perhaps give you the opportunity to give him a farewell.
Okay. If we don't, does it still happen? All right, we'll do that. Thank you. Takes us to agenda item number 3, the consent items A through F. The first is emergency 3A, Emergency Services Homeland Security Region number 3 Mutual Aid Agreement.
Yeah, you reviewed this item, Commissioners, last week, and this agreement for your consideration is to coordinate a mutual aid agreement within the Homeland Security Region 3, which includes the cities, the county cities and tribes of Grace Harbor, Lewis, Mason, Pacific, and Thurston counties. And this mutual aid agreement allows for mutual response in the case of an emergency. It really doesn't have a dollar amount of this. It just opens up the opportunity for us to coordinate and maybe reach out to resources, both either whether the county needs or we can provide to other counties in case of an emergency. And the emergency is not defined. The emergency is defined at the moment that may occur.
Okay. Anything on that? Questions? Comments? Okay, good, thank you. 3B, the Sheriff Black Lake Regatta.
Yes, this is the yearly request to for your consideration to approve allowing the Seattle Drag and Ski Springboat Association to hold a race event on Blood Lake on July 6th through the 7th of this year. They have already paid the $500 fee, and they have met all the requirements for your consideration.
Okay, and the overtime is reimbursed by the Regatta
If
Association?
they have requested security by the sheriff's office, that will be reimbursed on an overtime basis. And the sheriff deputies who participate on that security will be off duty. They will not be affected by the normal patrol requirements.
Right, perfect. 3C, the assessor, resolution reclassifying a position.
Yes, you also reviewed this item last week, and as you may recall, Robin provided a little bit of history, and this is related to a position that is currently funded by the READ Technology Fund. And I think some of the strategies this and the strategy the assessor is taken to be responsive of the READ Technology Fund that is in the long term is windowing down. So this request for you is to consider reclassification of a position from a senior appraiser to appraiser assistant. And the impact on the budget will go from $5,795 a month to $4,541 a month. That will be a decrease of $1,254 or 28%. And again, I believe the assessor has worked with HR and Robin, and this is some of the steps he has taken to address the concerns of the REIT Technology Fund.
Okay.
No.
All right, 3D, appointment to Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board.
Yes, for your consideration is to appoint Ms. Paula Holroyd to the Stormwater and Surface Water Advisory Board as a member residing in District Number 3. And the appointment will go from June 21st, 2019, ending on June 25th, 2022. And you discussed this on a couple of occasions, and I believe this is just following up the direction of the board. And later on, La Bonita is going to give you some additional feedback on the other member. There was also another application for your consideration for this board as well.
Anything?
Nope, good.
Yeah, the lettering behind Larry's name.
NPDES? Larry Schaffner?
Is the National Pollution Discharge System permit. That's the actual permit that we have. You'd like to spell that out?
Well, I just think it's important
Okay.
that the public, when they review this,
Yep.
they probably don't have a clue about what, they might think it's some kind of a degree or something.
Yeah, well, let's spell that out.
It probably is.
Well,
No, it's actually a permit.
yes.
Yeah.
All right, E, Emergency Services Wildfire Interagency Agreement.
As you may recall, the Emergency Services has a trailer, and during the budget process, you have the board approve also to purchase another trailer in Emergency Services. And this agreement really allows the Emergency Services to lease those two trailers to DNR to respond to wildfires. This has been a practice in the past. And it certainly is an equipment that we have, is an equipment that we can probably make it available to DNR. And in a way, is a revenue generator as well. So the equipment doesn't just sit there in the parking lot. So this is a continuation of this agreement, and for your considerations, for you to extend that through April 30, 2024.
Anything? Okay. Anything on that?
No.
And then 3F takes us to the financial services voucher list. Any questions or comments or polls or
No.
concerns? Okay. Moves us to agenda item number 4, department items, the Sheriff's 2017 Justice Assistant Grant Acceptance.
Yes, as you may recall, on May 14th, the board approved the Sheriff's Office to go ahead and apply for this Justice Assistant Grant, also known as JAG grant. Also, you may recall you had a great conversation because the dollars associated with this particular grant is a 2017 dollars, and that is managed by the Washington Department of Commerce. A little bit of history on this. The JAG grants had some requirements related to ICE holdings. And at that time, the state filed litigation against the federal government that perhaps those requirements were not necessarily lawful. I believe the state was successful on that particular grant, and that's how the 2017 JAG dollars become available, and those do not have those requirements. However, you may see another request this coming year for additional JAG grants, and at that point will be another decision point for you because those requirements perhaps may be still in place for the new money. And again, this is 2017. The 2017 JAG dollars managed by the Washington Department of Commerce do not have those requirements from the Department of Justice.
Okay. Anything?
Does that go strictly towards revenue? Because we're past the date of expenditure, so does this just
Yeah, this-
add to
this-
our revenue?
No, this will support current
Yeah.
expenditures.
Yeah.
A federal grant, you have like 3 years to spend it.
Okay,
So it's coming through the state, and we'll spend it in the current year.
okay.
And this will provide funding for a portion of the the county's narcotics task force. The commander position of that task force is going to fund portions of that.
Okay.
I will not support this grant with the strings attached, so I'm very hopeful that the courts can sort this out for 2018. But since we've got a court decision clearly removing those strings for 2017, I'm supporting this item.
Okay. Agenda item number 5, public defense, contract with the state of Washington of public defense.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, commissioners. And this is an agreement with the Washington State Office of Public Defense, where they will be reimbursing the county for $159,756 or a monthly payment of $11,479. And this is to provide indigent dependency and termination defense legal services in juvenile court. Last week, you asked whether this amount of $159,756 will cover all the expenses. I checked with Patrick O'Connor on that question, and he affirmatively said yes, it will be covering all the expenses associated with those services. And this contract will go from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, for a year.
Would you please go through those numbers again? 159,000.
It's $159,756 a yearly basis, and that will equate to just about a monthly payment of $11,479.
Okay. Anything, Gary? Ty?
This is not an area that we have in-house attorneys for, is that right? Or we don't have adequate number of in-house attorneys? That's the concept? So we contract out?
Yeah, I believe that is the case.
Okay.
All right. And I would just point out that even though we hear indigent defense, indigent dependency, termination defense, it's all rather just indigent defense. It's justice for all is what it is. But I'm ready to move on to that one. Agenda item number 6, Public Health Social Services, amend the Henderson Inlet Shellfish Protection District and the Squally Reach Shellfish Protection District.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, commissioners, and Art Story was able to give you an explanation as to what the intent of this particular amendment includes. And this ordinance will amend the Nisqually Reach and the Henderson Inlet Shellfish Protection Districts, and we'll add how many? Maybe 8 elements to the work plan, which includes the update, the 2005 Henderson Inlet and Nisqually Reach Shellfish Protection Districts, implementation of the work plan for phases 2 and 3, work to provide a dedicated sustainable funding sources for water quality improvements, funding within the Henderson Inlet and Nisqually Reach Shellfish Protection Districts, monitor water quality within the Henderson Inlet and its tributaries, and work to identify sources of surface water pollution with a focus on the Dobbs and Fleming Creeks. Work to implement agricultural best management practices, including plans for small farms, and for waste management, emphasizing sites where water quality degradation has been documented. Seek funding for corrective actions needed to correct sources for water quality pollution. Work with partners to identify areas along Woodard Creek that are most impacted by stormwater runoff and complete stormwater systems improvements that will improve water quality and the management of the roadside stormwater. And lastly, create and implement a stewardship campaign that teaches residents how to reduce pollution from pets, septic systems, agriculture, and land management practices. Those are the elements there for your consideration that are included on the amendment. Also, you received what I believe it was a great briefing this past Friday, Tilly, on your planning session related to water quality, which is give you perhaps more additional perspective on this particular request.
And it was. It was a good briefing. Anything?
I'm happy that we're putting this kind of attention to Henderson and Nisqually. My only concern is that we have two other inlets that probably face similar challenges and need similar attention. So hoping we can find a way to move around the Puget Sound and restore all of our marine inlets.
Anything?
What's the dollar impact on this?
It doesn't have a dollar impact, including on this amendment.
So, I mean, there won't be any impact?
What it does is it allows the staff to reach out to grants and any potential financial elements. But really, the amendment does not include a dollar amount.
All right, I agree, restoring and protecting our natural resources is vital to our whole region and the planet. 6B, approval of Thurston County Professional Services Agreement.
Yes, this is a new item. This is one of the items that we moved from July 2nd to this afternoon, so this is the first time you hear this. In this agreement, there's the Thurston Mason County's Developmental Disability Professional Services Agreement is from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. The Thurston County Developmental Disabilities Program uses funds from the Developmental Disabilities Administration, DDA, from the state to contract with local services providers to deliver supported employment, high school transition, and community inclusion services for adults with developmental disabilities in Thurston and Mason counties. Supported employment services assist clients with career exploration, job development, on-the-job training, and workplace support to help adults with developmental disabilities access and retain meaningful employment. This contract, for your consideration, is intended to go through June 30, 2020, and it will be awarding individual contracts to Career Quest, Center Force, Exceptional Foresters, also known as EFI, Morningside, and Vetus, I believe. And the county just received from DDA, the state, $5.4 million, and that will be the source in which those services will be provided to those providers. And it's just about $70 an hour for those services that we compensate, and that will give you just about a burn rate of about $400,000 a month for fulfill those requirements. Also, later on your agenda, which is related to this item in a way, not necessarily the item later on your agenda is predicated on this item, is related to the Morningside funding.
I noted that,
and a little more detail as to some of the challenges that we have on that aspect. But for your consideration, this is to give the Director of Public Health Social Services the authority to sign those contracts to provide those services as I outlined. And Jennifer is here to answer any questions that you may have on this program.
Do you have any questions?
I mean, is this consistent with what a sort of continuation of previous programs from previous years,
That
or
is
is there
correct.
any changes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything? So this is the constant between what's later on the agenda, Morningside funding, and this item, 6B on the agenda. They're not really related?
They're not related. And later on your agenda is a little bit nuances as to how those services are being provided by Morningside.
The sheltered workplace.
Yeah, and so, but we'll continue to support what Morningside does in terms of providing the services for disabled individuals.
Okay.
But the item later on your agenda is a little bit unrelated. It's more of an operational discussion.
Thank you. Yay.
The money you said comes from a developmental disabilities,
Yeah, this the Developmental Disabilities Administration from the state.
is it like just formulaic to the counties, or is there, how does that, do you know how that
The
money is?
actual distribution?
Yeah.
Good question. Maybe Jennifer can help us on that.
Jennifer Papchakakim, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So the state has an algorithm based on,
For the record, introduce
Oh,
yourself.
yeah.
sorry,
Yes.
Jennifer Popchak-Hakeem, Developmental Disabilities Program, Thurston County. So to your question, the state has an algorithm that's based on the number of clients and the number of hours each client receives per month. So they take a point in time from the previous year and run that algorithm and then figure out how much money will be placed into the contract for the coming year. And if during the year things change and we get more clients and the hours increase, they will amend our contract for an additional amount to cover the increased services.
So we're able to serve basically all the needs of
Correct.
those folks in that community because we can, okay, that's great. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Any further? Nope. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Takes us into agenda item number 7, Central Services and the Triage Restroom Repair Project.
Yeah, for your consideration, Commissioners, is for you to award $60,054.89, which includes a 10% sales tax to Able General Contracting of Lakewood to provide restroom repairs at the Triage facility. The bathrooms have suffered damages, physical damages that needs a repair, and this request is for your consideration to award the contract and proceed with the project.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 8, Public Works Project Prospectus and Local Agency Agreement for Mullen Road.
Yes, items 8A and 8B are related, and they're also related to the presentation that you have at the beginning of the meeting. This is on the improvements on Mullen Road, that is from Lacey City Limits to Carpenter Road. Item 8A is a authorization for the director to enter into a what we call is a prospectus and a local agency agreement with the state to secure $2 million in federal funding for construction. This project has a cost of for construction of $11,137,225. She's very exact. And the funding sources are $2 million from the federal government, which is this prospectus will secure those dollars from the Surface Transportation Program. We have $4,209,000 from the state, which from the Transportation Improvement Board. The City of Lacey is participating with $2,665,175, and the county from the road fund is participating, contributing $2,262,280. And again, the construction is expected to begin late this year, 2019, and will go for at least 2 years.
Okay. Anything?
Is that going to be, is there a period of time that we know between now and the next annexation activity is going to be taking on there?
That is, obviously this is in the Lacey UGA, but it will be very difficult to predict when that annexation will occur.
Okay, so nothing on the horizon?
At least that I know of, there is nothing on the books.
Thank you.
This
I
is
have
Mullen, not to be confused with Marvin Road.
Did I say Marvin?
Yeah, no, I did
Oh.
earlier. Go ahead, Robin.
I'm just curious about the percentage. They say 20% of the original agreement, which would be 400,000.
Yeah, this got 10%, sorry.
It should be 10, and the
And
calculation would.
How come we didn't catch that?
we're been catching
Good
those as we
grief,
go,
man.
so it should be 10%.
Even if 20 was right, 500 would not be.
Yeah. So we'll revise the numbers.
Thank you, good catch. So is that A and B, or do you have something separate on B?
8B is for you to consider issuing the call for bids to secure the contractor to perform the construction of this project.
Okay. Anything? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 9, CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development Contract with TRPC.
You also reviewed this item, Commissioners, and this is to increase the amount of the services the Thurston Regional Planning Council provides as the chief clerk for the Boundary Review Board. And the increase is from $8,000 to $17,500. I believe you had some questions last week, and the director of CPED, Josh Cummings, was able to answer those questions. And also he's available today if you have additional questions on this item.
I asked my questions last week.
Yeah, I asked mine last week too, so I'm good.
I just think it's funny that rather than 10% over cost or whatever, overruns, whatever, this just has a not to exceed $1,000 period, rather than a percentage. But I have no questions on this. We discussed it pretty in depth last week. 9B, final consideration emergency housing ordinance interim regulation.
Yeah, I believe you have, many conversations related to this particular item. So for you before you for a final decision by the board in terms of enacting an emergency homeless encampment regulation, which is related to authorizing the director of CPED to waive some of the requirements outlined in Title 22 as well as Title 23 of the Thurston County Code.
Okay. Anything?
That'll be up for a vote this afternoon, right?
That is
Yep.
correct.
Yeah.
Good.
Nope. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 10, emergency services, intergovernmental emergency medical services contract.
You also reviewed this item, Commissioners, and this amendment is related to the increase on the lease cost that we have for to lease the space on Tumwater, Olympia, and Lacey Fire Departments. The lease increase has not changed since 2017, and it will go from $15.75 per square foot to $16.67 per square foot, to an overall increase of $7,798. And this just is the cost of doing business.
Gary,
And this is coming from Medic One funding.
anything?
No. And I
Nope.
think the board agreed with all this, right?
The EMS
That was 10A, 10B, professional services contract, Olympia Emergency Services Professional, an LLC.
This item for your consideration is amendment number 1 with the current professional services that we have with Olympia Emergency Services Professional to extend the services for the medical program director for the period of September 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2020. And also the request is for you to give authority to the Director of Emergency Services to sign the agreement, and 10% of the time and the amount which not exceeds $40,000, which is within his authority as a director. And this is coming from Medic One. I believe the EMS Council has also reviewed this item.
And they've reviewed it and agreed to.
Right. And yeah.
Anything further?
No.
Anything?
No.
Okay. That takes us to agenda item number 11. The county manager will have our report on our work sessions and such for the last week. And then the county manager will review our upcoming schedule.
That is correct. And I will review for the next 2 weeks, since next week's board meeting will be canceled.
The July
2nd
meeting is canceled. Okay.
But we will have agenda setting.
We will have an agenda setting, so the same session will be here. We'll review the agenda for July 9th at that point, and among other items.
Okay. And then we'll move into, at 3 o'clock, a public hearing, Public Health and Social Services on the 2019 HUD Annual Action Plan.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, and this is for you to receive public testimony on the 2019 Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD Annual Action Plan, sorry. And so this plan identified just about $1.2 million in CDBG money. That will be the Community Development Block Grant, as well as $785,000 for the home funding. And I believe you know how the distribution of the CDBG has been done in the past. This is just for you to receive public testimony to approve the plan. And also, I review a little bit of the action item just to hopefully clarify the intent of this motion. And again, this is a option number 2 to move and adopt the 2018 Housing, the HUD Annual Action Plan is for your consideration, depending on the public testimony that you may receive this afternoon. You're not necessarily put in the position to approve everything this afternoon, but this is just as an option. The only option that you must take is the close the public hearing, but the other options are up to your discretion.
Okay.
Have we received any written comment so far on this plan?
Maybe Tom can help us out.
Tom, welcome.
Welcome, Tom.
I haven't heard anything, so that's why I'm checking in.
Hi, Tom Webster, Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention. We received one written comment. I would consider it more editorial. She had some word choice suggestions for us that we accepted and took into consideration, but that's the only comments we've received.
Okay.
Any questions or comments?
No.
I do. We chatted about this, I believe, last week, and that was this CDBG money is a finite amount of money being divvied up 3 different ways, or 4 different ways, whatever, I think 3. But it says in the motion, amending up to 10% of the approved project dollar amount. How do we resolve that?
I believe the conversation was in terms of just in case if there's and the 10% is related to the specific contracts that we have with the specific jurisdictions. So if a jurisdiction perhaps doesn't spend that money, it goes back to the group to redistribute it among other projects. And what allows the director is, as opposed to come back to you on the individual contracts, is up to 10% to deviate from the initial allocation of those contracts.
Perfect. What I wanted to hear. I want the public to hear that. Good, thank you. Nothing further on that. Thank you, Tom. And then we'll close the public hearing. That concludes today's agenda for the Board of County Commissioners. Now we're moving into, we're not going to review the July 2nd agenda because that meeting has been canceled. And we'll get into proclamations and awards.
Good morning.
Good morning, La Bonita.
La Bonita Beaumar, Clerk of the Board. I have no proclamations or awards to present today.
Okay. Scratch that. Advisory boards and commissions.
Yes, the application for Jacqueline Simmons, you have reviewed this a couple of weeks ago. Staff has, of that board, has provided a email, which I have included in your packet. And the issue was that Ms. Simmons was not a district availability for her particular district. She's in District 2. And the position that's available is for District 1. Phyllis Farrell is a member of that board, and the chair and a few of the members have come to agreement in having Phyllis in the District 1 position, where she actually lives, and Jacqueline to fill the member-at-large position that Phyllis is currently in. So if everyone is in agreement, let me know what agenda you would like for this to be on.
So Phyllis for 1 and Jacqueline for 2.
Jacqueline will be
At large.
a member at
At
large.
large, at large.
And I further see from the email that the chair, Mr. Carlson, supports this
Yes.
recommendation. So,
Yeah. Question or comments? Anything further?
No.
Okay,
Got 3 thumbs ups.
thank you.
Thumbs up for that.
The other application that you have in your packet is for the Area Agency on Aging. And Commissioner Edwards was going to attend a meeting or get some information back, and I don't know,
It wasn't to attend, but waiting for some information
waiting
back.
for some, okay,
So is that still pending? Okay.
that's all that I have.
If that's pending, then good. Thank you. Thank you, Law.
Commissioners, related to boards and commissions, Commissioner Minzer asked about the Housing Authority of Thurston County and how the appointments have worked. For some reason, which we have not been able to pinpoint as to why, the intent of the appointments has to be staggered in terms of, every year you may consider appointments. But for some reason, all those appointments have been aligned, and I think most of the appointments will be coming to you in 2022, to the board for either reappointment or consider new applications. So, and that's what I wanted to bring back, and in fact, that was a request by Commissioner Minzer, and again, we have not been able to identify the reason as to why those appointments were aligned to those appointments.
Aligned as of the year?
Yeah, to the same year.
Wow.
There's
odd, yeah.
five members, 5-year terms, and there's supposed to be one up every year.
Staggered, right, yeah.
And it was just kind of random. I came across this. The mayor of Tumwater asked me who's on the board and how they're selected and what the terms were. So I looked into it. Turned out that we have 5 people on 5-year terms, but there's no term up until 2022, and there's like 2 or 3 up that year and 2 or 3 up the following year. So I couldn't, I'm sure there's a reason, but somehow they're not staggered with a yearly appointment. So I just was curious about that, leading up to the item that I may be proposing that we discuss term limits for those. Some of the members of that board, I don't know any of them except for Neil McClanahan, but some have been on there for 20, 30 years. And it's a rapidly evolving area of housing in homelessness, et cetera. So to me, that board, I'm not a big term limit person across the board, but that seems to be an area where maybe we would think about 2 5-year terms, give somebody a decade on the Housing Authority board. So that's something I'd like the board to discuss at some point, is maybe thinking about 2 terms as a limit on the Housing Authority board. But anyway, as a predicate to that, I was trying to figure out who was on and when they're up and why we didn't have them staggered like the rules in the sheet that I saw, and I think it's right out of the statute,
Yes.
provides.
Yes.
But it may be, given that nobody's up for 3 years, it may be a very appropriate time to consider whether term limits are appropriate, because everybody's got a couple, 3 more years on their term, regardless how long they've been on.
Thoughts, opinions?
Is there apparently no history that can tell us how or when all this happened, apparently?
I have gone back through my personal records to 1992, and nothing showed exactly why this ended up at this point. I did see that possibly there were a couple of unexpired terms, and instead of them fulfilling the last year of the term, they were appointed to a full term. But I don't have all of the information. I have talked with staff of the Housing Authority, and they're also doing some research for me.
Craig Chance didn't even know, right?
No, he did not, and he's been associated with the board since 1992.
So that means we haven't even solicited people to put in for it, so we don't know how difficult it would be to fill.
Correct.
And so I don't know what you're suggesting, 2 5-year terms, whether it be 2 4-year, 2 6-year, whatever. I'm open to discussing that. Yeah, I would think there'd be plenty of people who want to fill in behind. But it's going to merit a good discussion of the board. Go ahead.
Is this going to I don't, do we have legal requirements we need to be aware of when filling this board, like from HUD or something like that? I mean, I'm kind of curious how it developed. I think Neil's been on there before 92, I think, but I don't.
1892.
So RCW 3582040 is the statute that governs the appointments, not necessarily specifically to the housing authority, but all the boards and commissions that you appoint. In my first read of this, I think nothing in here that will prevent you to set some term limits if that is the desire by the board.
I guess what I'm wondering about what about maybe, and we can get into that in another discussion at a work session maybe, but is there a reason that it has to be 5 years instead of 3 years? Or a lot of the boards are 3 years.
I'm guessing, and I think the answer, because I don't have it in front of me, but I looked at the statute. I don't think there's any reason. I'm guessing that because there are 5 members and they wanted one person up every year, they just went with 5-year term, and that way
that made sense at the time.
That way you could have one person up every year, and a rolling
But then
fresh blood.
Something happened.
Something
You don't
happened,
lose
and we
all
got
your
way
history.
off of I'm guessing that what law said is correct. That you because for example, when I took over the Water Conservancy Board seat, I got only it's a 6-year term, but I only got the 3.5 left. I didn't get just a new 6-year term. And that's how and probably somebody just didn't follow that at some point. They just gave the new person a full 5 years rather than the remaining portion of that particular seat.
Yes.
And it would be an easy mistake to make, and then you get it all off track.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
So what I'm hearing is perhaps you would like to have a more discussion on this proposal. Maybe I can bring this to your attention early in the spring next year.
Yeah, along with the history of the people that are on the board, how long they've been on the
Yeah.
appointment and stuff.
Right. Because I, as Commissioner Messer stated, I don't think it's an urgent matter, but I will bring this in the spring if that is okay. But if you'd like for me to bring earlier, I can certainly do that.
Spring is fine.
That's okay with me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a ways out, but that's fine. I mean, I think everybody who's on there is probably appropriate to be on there, but I'd say that'd be the kind of outer limit of when I would want to address this.
So make a note.
Yes, I did.
Okay, that takes us to, that's it, La Benita?
Yes.
Okay. PIO, check in.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I don't know if you've seen or not from the Olympian, but they hired a new reporter that will be covering Thurston County government and courts. Her name is Sarah. I apologize if I am butchering the last name, either Gensler or Gensler, maybe. She plans on being at the BoCC meeting this afternoon, so you'll have an opportunity to meet her. The UAS footage that I've been talking about, so the unmanned aircraft system, is that right? Unmanned aircraft system, I forget every time. We completed that footage on Friday and on Sunday, and so I'll be taking that footage and giving it to TC Media to include in some of the courthouse informational videos. We got some really great footage. They did a really good job. We're also interviewing Judge Buckley and with District Court and Judge Murphy with Superior Court this Friday to include in that informational video as well. I've drafted a social media policy for the county. It's beginning to go through the review process, so hopefully that will be coming in front of you guys in the next few months.
Which will be coming in a few months.
Social media policy. Yeah. And then Brian has been working on a video series with Commissioner Hutchings on civility. They're going to begin promoting that in July, and then it will air in August. And then this Friday, he is filming with Commissioner Menser for his Thurston County Connection on parks. So that should be coming out this...
Disability programs, I think. Oh, all Parks and Recreation
Parks and
programs.
Recreation programs.
Yep.
Okay, so Parks and Recreation programs, and that should come out the second week in July. So look forward to that.
So, first,
No, I'm good.
Just that, now we have a competing video, and I'm a broken record on this, but the clock is ticking on us being able to put out accurate information for the public on the courthouse, so.
I am moving as fast as I can.
I know you are. I just have to keep beating the drum.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that too.
FAQ,
Well, and the informational video that's being worked on,
video and FAQ.
Yeah.
We just-
it's circulating the issue. It's good, but the issue is circulating through social media and next door apps and all over the place. And I want to make sure that we've got the best information out there for folks to rely on.
I agree.
Not only the best, but the right information, because there's a lot of fake news being put out there.
I
And
agree.
just don't want to take too many more, take around too much, take around too much.
Exactly.
Also, Sarah Gensler, I emailed her, and I'm guessing Gensler, and it bounced back saying it's an invalid email. So it could have been, number one, it was in the Olympian incorrectly, but I think more likely it hadn't been activated because she was to take, her first day was the following day. So maybe that's why it bounced back.
Yeah, I emailed her yesterday and it worked.
At the same email address,
Yes,
oh, it must be the same one, yeah.
I'm gonna guess it is.
sgensler@theolympian.com.
Yes,
So it must have been because she hadn't actually started work yet.
Possibly.
Jumping on that. So good, welcome her.
Is she a new staff or is she replacing somebody?
she's a new staff. I'm assuming that they're just now filling Lisa Pemberton's old spot.
Okay.
Because they didn't fill hers for
Abby's-
about a year and a half. Abby wasn't dedicated to
She's
Thurston
still
County
there doing other
government. She's still
things.
there, yeah.
Okay.
Her work.
No, she wasn't dedicated to Thurston County government and the courts. Yeah, no,
Assigned
no.
to-
She wasn't assigned just to us. This position, this reporter is assigned to Thurston County government and courts.
Great.
Yeah.
So that answered my question, Sarah, the video, and the FAQ. Here on the recording.
Yes.
In the meantime, if anybody goes to the Thurston County web page,
Yep.
the very first top item right there is Thurston County Courthouse Update. And you can actually link and click a button here and there, and you can put in your own interactive information. You can put in what your assessed value of your home is, hit a button, and it tells you exactly what your monthly or annual payment will be, correct? Robin? Yep. Okay. So there's no mystery to this. Click, put in your information, and bang, there it is. Okay, so I just hope people take advantage of that. Got it? Okay. Anything other further from PIO, or for the PIO?
No.
Oh, and Brian, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. That takes us to public hearing decisions pending.
There's none.
There's none. Well, that is perfect, because it's 9:58, and we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Well, let's go back to 10:10, that'd be 12 minutes. 10:10, we'll be back.
Maybe only 11.
be July 9th.
You prepared to talk about Asset Coalition, Robin? Because here we go. Welcome back. And this is still June 25th and 2019. And now we're going to move into the commissioner items. And the first one is Asset Building Coalition Overview. And I'm looking to the left, so Robin or
Sorry.
Romero. No, that's fine.
Sorry, I went over my allotted time at break. Thank you, commissioners. This is an item that you may remember it was discussed maybe a couple of weeks ago about the building coalition. So I provided you with a two-pager informational for you, which outlines the mission and vision of this coalition. And on the back side is the listing of the membership of that. Some of the, as you may recall, some of the questions was whether the county has been involved in this coalition or not. So I have touched base with your Director of Public Health and Social Services. She's here today, and she's would like to provide some additional feedback related to this particular coalition.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. Sorry, my microphone's. So yes, I'm happy to provide more information about the Asset Building Coalition. I happen to be in a position to answer questions and provide more information because prior to taking this position, I was chair of the Asset Building Coalition for 3 years. So the Asset Building Coalition's mission, as you have on here, is to connect partners and community resources to promote opportunities for people with limited incomes to become more resilient and prosperous. And the Asset Building Coalition is an organization of various community members representing different sectors, including economy, food, housing, healthcare, education, and other members of our community. And they really focus on improving the lives of people with limited incomes. A way in which the county has been involved in the Asset Building Coalition and is currently still involved with the Asset Building Coalition is through the connection with Thurston Thrives. So just to provide a little bit of history around the connection between Asset Building Coalition and Thurston Thrives is several years ago when Thurston Thrives was formed by the Board of Health here. The Asset Building Coalition was one of the organizations that offered to be a fiscal agent for Thurston Thrives. The Economic Development Council, led by Michael Cade, is the fiscal agent for the Thurston Asset Building Coalition. And as you know, the Thurston County Chamber Foundation is the fiscal agent for Thurston Thrives and the Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council. So at that time, there were two proposals to the Board of Health to integrate the various groups that were all working together on many of the same important community issues. At the time, the Board of Health selected the Thurston County Chamber Foundation to be the backbone agency, fiscal agent for Thurston Thrives, and Commissioner Sandra Romero at the time and myself in the role of chair negotiated a seat on Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council for Asset Building Coalition with the intent that duplication would be reduced and collaboration and alignment would be formed between the Thurston Thrives action teams and the Thurston Asset Building Coalition hubs. As a result of that, a merger of some sorts was considered, and the Thurston Thrives action teams merged with the Thurston Asset Building Coalition hubs. So the collaboration exists to this day. So the, for example, on this, I don't know, on the.
You need some duct tape?
That's okay.
Maybe that'll help
Here,
you.
I'll just. So in your packet here on the Thurston Asset Building Coalition, you'll see South Sound Food System Network and Economic Advancement Hub. Those are joint action teams with Thurston Thrives. So The Thurston County Safety Net Council at one time was connected with the Clinical Care Action Team that was chaired by Mark Friedman at the time when Mark left the BHO, or when the BHO departed from the county. That team that team integrated with the Safety Net Council. So our staff actively participate in all of these action teams and hubs, as it's called by the Thurston Asset Building Coalition. So Liz Davis, our Director of Child, Family, and Community Wellness, as well as some of our nursing staff and other staff participate on the Safety Net Council. We participate on the Food Systems Council, Leslie Price from our food team, Economic Advancement Hub, and the Homeless Housing Hub. Keely Marino represents the county on that particular team. So we're very well integrated with the teams. As far as the steering committee composition, they have not had a government seat. It has been a sector seat. That's one of the reasons when I came to the county, I resigned from that coalition as chair, not only to focus on this job, but because that seat just did not exist. I've reached out to the current chair, Hillary Sowens, who's also executive director of the YWCA, to see if there may be an opportunity for the county, and specifically Public Health and Social Services, to become more involved in the leadership of Asset Building Coalition. They recently gave up their seat on the Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council, and Michael Cade, representing the Economic Advancement Hub and Economic Action Team, is playing the role of liaison between Thurston Asset Building Coalition and Thurston Thrives. I know it's a little bit complicated.
Questions?
We're going to talk about money.
I don't know. We're talking about whatever you want to talk about, within reason. Not gophers.
Okay. No, I'll pass for now. I'll just listen.
Okay.
So going back to housing, so what sounds like you have two of the hubs that are overlapped. You said food and the economy that are mutually shared, action team / hub.
They are all shared with the, I would say the exception right now is the Thurston County Safety Net Council, because the Clinical Care Action Team initially integrated with the Thurston County Safety Net Council, but then we had changes within the county, and so we're trying to revive that relationship with our participation on the Safety Net Council.
So as to housing, you're saying that the housing hub is shared by the two groups?
Yes.
But they don't. But they gave. Then why did they give up their seat? If they're that integrated with Thurston Thrives, why did they give up their seat on the coordinating council?
The email we had from Christina Daniels, who was the past chair of the Asset Building Coalition, who sat in that seat, she provided an email to Crosby Carter of the Thurston County Chamber Foundation, and essentially stated that the initial seat was, the intent of that seat was created to further develop this mutual collaboration and reduce duplication, and it was extra volunteer time for them to do that, and they felt that that could be achieved since Michael Cade recently joined the Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council representing the economic team. And so I think, there was at times discussions about mergers between the two groups, but the Thurston Asset Building Coalition, has their own strong membership. They're very dedicated to serving individuals with limited incomes. The focus of Thurston Thrives has been broader, and I think they want to continue to have their own identity, do their own work, but very much still a strong collaboration and very strong relationships, and many of the same people that are on both.
I would, if that's the intent, that Michael Cade is the connection, I would think that he should be reporting monthly. I know that you're not in, calling the shots, but you're, opining, I guess, as the chair would say, about the fact that we should be having monthly reports from, through Michael Cade, I suppose, about what the Asset Building Coalition is doing. Because they're sharing hubs, they're obviously overlapping things. And despite you saying that there's multiple people that are involved in both, I mean, at this table, nobody had even heard of, and again, I claim that I'm kind of new, so I get a pass, but obviously, obviously there's a problem with communication because people that have been sitting here for years and years had no idea that there was even this overlapping structures. And so when we were having, this all came up because we were trying to have a conversation about Thurston Thrives and how to really increase its impact and its structure, and having a parallel organization with people doing things, sort of overlapping but sort of not, dilutes, I think, both organizations. Not to say that they shouldn't be separate or couldn't be separate and effective, I'm not saying that, but to have them doing that and having that kind of or lack of information and communication and understanding of what they're doing, I think does dilute them. So we've got, in my view, we have kind of an issue that needs to be, maybe it's just, and maybe it was good 2 years ago and people change and it just kind of, the knowledge level just kind of declines and we just need to kind of, but I would say at a minimum, just based on what I'm hearing, we need to have a report to Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council, because those members can change every year, about what ABC is doing that might be overlapping, or what their priorities are. That's just a thought, but.
I think
Regarding that thought, rather than Michael Cade and perhaps Hillary Denimore, because she's the chair, is she still currently the chair?
she is the chair, and she did sit on the seat of Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council in the chair seat for a time, and the economic seat for a time. But Thurston Asset Building Coalition has requested that they do not have that seat on the Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council at this time, and they felt like the collaboration could be achieved through the hubs and action team leadership that's at the table. But this was a very lengthy, several years ago. There was a lot of effort to integrate these two bodies for exactly the reasons that you're saying.
More?
Well, do you think, asking your opinion, do you think that it's productive the way it's structured now and the way the communication is flowing, or what do you think about the way the two organizations stand at this point? Are you comfortable with how they're
Yeah, sure. I will just, say in my previous role, I put a tremendous amount of effort into trying to help to integrate the two organizations and the efforts, and I think that any further way in which we can do that would be great. I was disappointed to hear that the Asset Building Coalition seat isn't represented on the council anymore. But again, I've reached out to Hillary, and we work closely with many of the members, and I think there is still strong desire to collaborate. But again, different boards, and they are an independent organization.
Yeah. Well, like, for example, the community health assessment exercise we did last meeting, they would have been a great voice to have, given that their focus is on low income. The equity concerns that we were working on, seems like they'd be super important. And looking at the steering committee, I know most of these people, and some of them are, like you say, like Derek Harris, he's integrally involved in the Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council, as is Michael Cade. I know Hillary Sowens and Malika Lamont and Lisa Smith and Shelley Willis. So these are people that are, as you say, involved in what Thurston Thrives is doing, substantively, if not physically, at the meetings. So.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Shelley, could you give us a good example of a specific example of the success that's come about because of this group and interaction with all other parties?
Sure. One thing that was really great, I think it was a year and a half ago or so, is there was a joint, two different joint shared learning summits between Thurston Thrives and the Asset Building Coalition. One was focused on housing, and the other one was focused on the opioid crisis. That one was a little bit longer ago, I think. But tremendous community attendance, participation, brought in some great speakers, a lot of local funder collaboration to put that together. As Commissioner Menser just referred to the topic of equity, that is an issue that Thurston Asset Building Coalition is really embracing right now. And also there's been lots of other shared community events, as well as connection with helping people to get connected to financial institutions. You'll also see represented on that board are several financial institutions. And so that's a really great linkage with the history of the Asset Building Coalition that they were able to bring in to help to work to address the social determinants of health. Because really, that's Asset Building Coalitions is addressing those, as well as Thurston Thrives.
Can you give us an example, a specific example, though, that really kind of says it all about how something came together, whether you want to use financial as the example or whatever you want to use? I mean, they went on to save $1 million. I don't know. You know, they bought a house, but you don't have to name anybody's name, but a specific example, sure, I think would help us, at least it would me, on understanding how these groups work together and the success story is.
To achieve their mission.
Yeah.
I am sorry, I can't think of any specific examples right now, but I know there are many. You can? Great. Thanks, Liz.
We got one coming here.
Liz Davis, Thurston County Public Health and Social Services, Division Director for Child, Family, and Community Wellness. As many of you know, I formerly was the coordinator for Thurston Thrives. And one of the collaborative successes that is really exciting is that 3 groups, it was the Asset Building Coalition, the Food Systems Network, and the Thurston Thrives Food Team, merged together to be one. They still are. They're called the South Sound Food Systems Network, and they've done some really amazing work. Last year, they had a 2-day food summit, which brought together tons of people from throughout Thurston County, producers, as well as members of the community at large. They had all sorts of learning activities and workshops for people that work in that industry, as well as bringing the community in to talk about healthy foods and also ways that our food systems impact our economy. And they also did a really fun thing that they called a local tasting salon, where local food producers and also craft beer distributors or craft beer makers and local distillers, all of them came together and were provided food, and there was an opportunity to both taste and learn for the community at large. So that was something that they've done in the past and that they also continue to do in the future. Yes.
So a bunch of people got together, tasted each other's food, and as a result of that, what happened that was a benefit to the community?
So that was only one part of the event, but there was a full day of learning experiences and workshops for people that work in that industry. When you go to one of those food systems meetings, and they meet monthly, and Leslie Price, who is our nutritionist at the health department, does participate. It's really amazing to see all of the representation from different parts of the food systems, everything from organic farmers to local ranchers to people that operate slaughterhouses, all sorts of different things, and they come together around projects as well as integrating. I think they put together a project together that was a mobile slaughterhouse unit that came out of that collaboration, and they all worked on that together. So I encourage you to go to one of those meetings, and we can provide you with those times and dates. But they really are highly productive, and it's been amazing to see over the last few years the way all those different producers collaborate together.
Was that I know you have a follow-up to that, Robin, but was that a local mobile slaughterhouse that was out in South County?
Yes, I believe so.
South of Tenino?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Do you have a follow-up? Okay, do you have any more questions on that?
No, I mean, that sounds more like an economic development activity or something more than, I'm trying to think of something that is benefiting, I don't know, a family, somebody that's down and out. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is rather than talking about things where we can have an example of a real success.
So
That's what I'm looking for.
I remembered one while Liz was talking. Besides
Okay.
the Food Systems Council was really great, but I apologize. I'm really having to reach back here. But one of the really exciting things around access to healthcare that happened a few years ago because of the Thurston Asset Building Coalition and all of the works of the hubs was to enroll people in healthcare when the Affordable Care Act passed. And in our state, through, at the time, Choice Regional Health Collaboration was awarded a contract to launch the Health Access Navigator program. And it was very innovative because of the participation and integration with Asset Building Coalition to have enrollment for healthcare in sites that served people with limited incomes. So for example, because of the Thurston Asset Building Coalition membership, people could go to the food bank and enroll in healthcare. They could go, so all the different members and sectors that were represented, housing organizations, food organizations, economic organizations, businesses joined together to wrap around this to increase access. And we had some of the highest enrollments in the state, lots of recognition for our community in a real innovative way that reached a lot of people with limited incomes in achieving health care. And that was really directly out of that collaboration. Also, the Asset Building Coalition, through the Community Foundation, received a Gates Foundation grant. And Gates Foundation does not typically fund in Thurston County, but because they fund community foundations, the proposal from the Asset Building Coalition was this integrated model of different sectors coming together to work together to improve the lives of people with limited incomes, and received a significant grant from the Gates Foundation to be able to launch some of these works and collaborations that then actually helped to really lay the framework for our social determinants of health initiatives. So there's been a lot of benefits, but really it's the strength is in the relationships, the different sectors coming together.
Do you have more on that?
That's a great example of I like the health enrollment piece. That's really important. So you're in a really unique position, having been obviously so integrally involved in one and now the other. So you're a unique person for me to ask this question. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but given where the two groups are now, are there any opportunities for building a better bridge or more impact? I mean, are there any things that we're missing or pushes that we as the board could give to one group or the other group, or helping coordinate, or things that you think that are missed opportunities?
Well, I really hope so and believe that the intent to collaborate for all members, everyone in the community is working on the same goals and same initiatives and improving health and prosperous individuals in our community. So yes, I think there is more that we can do. I was happy to hear back from Hillary that they're definitely interested in the county and our department becoming more involved, even though they typically, prior have not had a specific government seat on their steering committee. But I think that is an opportunity. I think just furthering the conversations between the two groups. A lot of opportunities around health equity right now, not only between Thurston Thrives and Asset Building Coalition, but for us as a county through Public Health and Social Services, that is one of our priorities, is to improve health equity. So I think there's a lot of work that we can do with the Asset Building Coalition to help further that, and continuing to strengthen the hubs and action teams. I think that is something that a lot of people didn't know about, that these groups were integrated, and I think there's a lot of opportunities there. But
has there never been a government seat on the Asset Building Coalition board?
That just was not the makeup. It's really a steering committee, and it was a sector-based membership. But they have expanded. So I think that they're evaluating their board now, I think, and their role in the community.
I think going to what Robin and Commissioner Edwards were asking, it would be helpful for me to hear Family Smith, Family Jones, how they received some type of service or aid in their income, savings, housing, healthcare, education, or food, something direct and tangible that this is a product of making Thurston County thrive in various ways. And I like Commissioner Menser's idea of having either Hillary or the Vice Chair, Malika, present, because they may have more tangible information than you folks are able to provide. And it's not a critique, it's that they may be able to provide more information. But how long has ABC been in existence?
I know over 10 years, probably 15 years.
So it's
it's part of the Washington State Asset Building Coalition as well. But in our community, the Asset Building Coalition is a little bit different than others in the state because it includes other sectors besides economy, because they really recognized early on that was important.
It predates Thurston Thrives.
Yes.
But they're becoming or fully integrated yet?
In Thurston Thrives? No.
Thurston Thrives, they're not.
Didn't they
No.
split with Thurston Thrives sometime back?
There was two bodies, many of the same members that were on both the initial Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council and the same members that were on Asset Building Coalition. There was a real desire by some members to merge those two together, but ultimately the two different organizations chose not to do that.
Okay, and so I see in this literature, and I don't know how fresh this is, that they're recruiting for additional steering committee members.
I think they have that. I checked that link. The link is not current.
Yeah.
However, I know that they are always looking for new steering committee members, and Hillary and I are going to meet and talk about that.
And I'll go back to one of Commissioner Edwards' very first questions. Is there any financial cost to the county on this?
No. There's no membership fees associated with Thurston Asset Building Coalition membership or participation on the steering committee.
Okay. Romero?
Maybe what I'm hearing is perhaps the board would like to get additional information related as to how this group could be reporting on their activities, whether it's at the Thurston Tribes Coordinating Council or to the board. So I'll work with Shelley as to what opportunities we'll have within, and also look at the possibility if there is a briefing that probably we can organize for you, just to consolidate all that information you have heard this morning.
Do you have anything further, Gary?
No, just, it sounds like there was a split up sometime back or some dust up, I guess, so, wasn't that way 4 or 5 years ago.
At the time, yes. It was really around the Board of Health had two different proposals to choose from, and at the time, the Board of Health chose the Thurston County Chamber Foundation instead of the Economic Development Council. And so that was really kind of the history. But the solution to that was to create a seat on the council and to merge the action teams and the hubs, which I think was a really great thing. And again, I apologize. I'm not in the role to represent this organization.
Right,
I happen to have this history. They're an independent organization, wonderful group, and I'm happy to collaborate with them further and invite them to come and present for themselves, because I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to speak on their behalf.
But we don't have, the ABC does not participate in all the hubs, right? I mean, like, did they show up to the climate clean? I know they're not on the Law and Justice Council, which is our Law and Justice hub.
There's 8 action teams of Thurston Thrives, and there's 4 hubs of the Asset Building Coalition.
Okay.
So
Those 4
yes.
are the same as 4 of the 8 action teams.
Yes, with the exception of Safety Net Council, because we don't currently have a health action team.
So that's one that's
Clinical
ABC,
care.
but not Thurston Thrives.
Correct.
So there's 3 basically that overlap.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's
And we
also
participate.
not clear at all from anything on this page or anything on the Thurston Thrives information. If you just read them, you would think that they were 2 completely separate
Food,
activities.
housing, and what's the third that's overlapped?
Economy.
Economy, food, and health
So
are
perhaps at
shared.
minimum, we could request that both entities advertise how they're a single
Yeah.
group, if they are for those.
Yes. I believe there has been a lot of conversations around marketing for both organizations on how to best describe the existing relationship. And again, I'm not privy to where the current status is of the organizations, other than knowing the most recent activity of them resigning from the council.
Well, and in your role today, and with Liz, you filled in some blanks and kind of framed it for us, gave me more information than I had before. So I think a briefing would be really good regarding this.
I'll work with Shelley.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're asked to consider a lot of the things related to Thurston Thrives, and to have a parallel organization so integrated that 3 of the hubs are shared, but we didn't know about that, or it's not properly. That just seems to be, we need to be fully, kind of cognizant of where these pieces stand, so that we can make good decisions about Thurston Thrives and its future.
Okay. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. And we'll remain seated for the next item, because
Yeah.
that's also ours.
Morningside. And Romero, you want to frame this for us?
Yeah, I'll frame this issue, and this is related to, I believe Commissioner Hutchins has been approached by the leadership of Morningside. And so what we have, as I consider to be the issue, the county contract services with Morningside to provide the Morningside's discovery zone, which they have been deemed not to be integrated according to the DDA, that's the Developmental Disabilities Administration of the state. So what it does is, just to frame that, apparently Morningside went ahead and built this infrastructure. They provide some training to individuals to reflect real-life work environments in a way. So what I believe the issue is, the DDA doesn't agree that perhaps that's the right approach, because it doesn't provide real-life experiences in terms of providing job opportunities to those individuals with developmental disabilities. So where we are in this particular venture is the county needs to provide a report by the end of this week related to the state, related to those activities the morning side was practicing. Just to give you an indication, the county, as far as I understand, was never given an indication the morning side was going through the process of building this and investing in this infrastructure. So it was not an opportunity perhaps for the county to provide some feedback in a way that perhaps that was not going to be accepted. I mean, they can continue on with those practices, but certainly it will not be funded based on the conditions that we have. But again, everything is coming from the Development Disabilities Administration through the state, and as well as some federal funds associated with this as well. That those funders, the state and the federal government, again, don't see this practice to be a real-life experience to those individuals who receive the training. That's the framework. And staff is here to walk you through in more details the timelines and perhaps some of the strings attached to the funding that we receive for these activities.
Thank you.
But correct me if I didn't frame the
Sure.
issue correctly.
Sure. Jennifer Popchak-Hakeem, Social Services Manager, and I oversee the Developmental Disabilities Program for Thurston County. So Romero did a great job of framing the issue, and I would emphasize the main piece being that this is when the state funds the county for these services, they get a 50% match from Medicaid. So the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services have set out the integrated settings rules for home and community-based services, and the individual supported employment that this whole issue is about is one of those home and community-based services settings. So it has to align with the federal rule about integrated settings. And when the Developmental Disabilities Administration went out with us during our on-site monitoring of the agency in March, and we had discussions thereafter, and they asked us to cease referrals for the Discovery Zone while we had further discussions and interpretations of the Centers for Medicaid Services Home and Community-Based Settings Integration Rule. And go ahead.
I'll wait till you're done. I don't want to interrupt your thought.
Well, I just want to emphasize that the issue here is that discovery is one component of individual employment services. There are 8 billable activities under supported employment, and discovery is one sub-segment of employment services. Okay. And when the agency bills us for discovery services, they don't denote that these services are conducted in the community and these services are conducted in the Discovery Zone.
So I just want to, do you understand Discovery Zone, what it is?
Not really.
You will now, okay? And here's my comparison. When an officer in the police academy goes through academy training, they go through the mock scenes at the end, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a pretend tavern, there's a pretend house, there's a pretend car stop, there's a pretend all these things, building search, and the officers go through a mock scene to prepare them for training, for the real life stuff.
Yeah.
Discovery Zone is similar in that there is a room that is a kitchen that prepares the clients or the students for prepping or setting silverware, setting tables, and busing. There's a room that's an office setting, so it prepares them for filing and phones and all the type of office type setting. There's one for clothing where they're folding clothes for a retail store and putting it on hangers and putting sizes together. Another for janitorial. So they have all these little segmented offices to help train the student to go out in the real world for reduce the anxiety, and they're more prepared to handle the public and do what they do. Many of not all, but many of the people at Costco that are handing out free samples come from Morningside, come from this because they're trained in that, meeting with the public and handing out samples.
Goodwill does some things like this too, don't they?
Who?
Goodwill?
I probably do.
Employ people like this.
So from what I understand, Morningside had a discovery zone at Legion and Plum, their previous discovery zone place, downstairs in the basement or so, and that wasn't an issue. But now that they moved that to Tumwater, now it's an issue, and I don't understand that.
And so let me jump in there. So
Thanks.
the Discovery Zone, and that was a good explanation of the Discovery Zone. The Discovery Zone, when it was at their organization, Legion Plum, it was an issue. It's just that we didn't know what was going on at that point. So it would have been an issue had we known about it. And I think there has been a lot more discussion about integrated settings. CMS has kind of heightened their scrutiny of integrated settings due to the closure of sheltered workshops and in Washington State, pre-vocational services. And this has some similarities to both of those things in that it's not integrated in the community. And I would say prior to Morningside developing this discovery zone, they did engage in discovery services in the community. That's how providers across the state do discovery. They'll reach out to an organization such as Safeway and ask that if an individual can come in and maybe stock shelves or learn how to front-face products. And so that's how it was conducted. And one of our staff that I had hired is from Morningside, and he and I have had great discussions about how discovery was conducted prior to the discovery zone. And what kind of initiated some of this further discussion and outreach by DDA, Developmental Disabilities Administration with the state, was case manager complaints and parent complaints, and we weren't privy to those initially. The state looped us in later, but we were hearing from case managers positive things about the discovery zone, and I think you could argue that there are some positive results from settings such as this. However, it doesn't meet the federal rule of integrated settings, and DDA has said that they will no longer fund services in the discovery zone as of August 31st if there is no proposal or plan that would integrate it or would somehow speak to integration. At this point, Morningside has not submitted any other plan. Their initial plan that they submitted, it was deemed reverse integration. And after discussions and communications with the state, I also agree that it's reverse integration, which is bringing in entities from the community into the zone other than bringing individuals with developmental disabilities out into the community.
So that's what's integration, that's what's missing, is the interaction with the public.
Right?
So is reverse integration doesn't pass muster?
Correct, and initially we have done a lot of research about reverse integration since that was first called out. Initially, we thought that integration would work in that fashion, but some other states have asked that question of CMS, the Centers for Medicaid Services, and they have said no, reverse integration is not acceptable under their integration rule.
So it's not that we don't think it's a good strategy, it's just that the federal government's just not allowing it to be funded.
The federal government is not allowing it, and that's the big issue. We do see some problems with it as is. I think one of the big problems for us down the road would be in monitoring. Because we would have to see that individuals are getting out in the community, that they're not staying at the discovery zone for any length of time. Mm-hmm. We've also been concerned about the amount of time that individuals have been spending in the zone, as well as some duplication of work that's being done in high school transition. So if we work with an individual in the high school transition program, and then they spin them into discovery, all of those activities already should have happened in high school transition. So as we have investigated this and kind of researched in preparation for our report and our determination, we have uncovered a lot of things that we didn't know previously. And again, as Romero had indicated, we were not brought into the loop when this was conceptualized and later implemented.
So it's not so much a problem as it is an issue that needs to be overcome somehow by Morningside, following the federal mandate.
Correct.
And they have, Morningside has until June 30, this Friday, to get this plan submitted?
Correct, and they've known for some time that they submitted an initial plan which was rejected, and it's been at least a month while we have been waiting for a plan, and I've been asking, hey, you know, do there things you need answered? Are there additional pieces that you need? You know, how can we help you kind of develop a plan that might work? From my feeling is that as far as the state, they're going to want to see something in the community. They're going to want to see discovery happening in the community. If Morningside continues to want to hold on to this space in Tumwater, I think that's going to be very difficult without it being reverse integration. However, we are not the only funding source for the Discovery Zone. They have other contracts, and some of the individuals in the Discovery Zone are paid for under other contracts, like the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and waiver that aging has.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed
we
that
get to you.
last piece. Does that mean that there's ways they can keep the Discovery Zone afloat if they want to through a different funding source? Is that what you?
They have individuals that are in the Discovery Zone that are paid through another funding source. So that's DVR, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And I additionally believe that a lot of the folks that are in there that are funded by the county, the Developmental Disabilities Administration is the second funder, DVR is the first funder. So I believe that a number of those individuals that are currently being funded by the county and the state could be funded through DVR initially and then move on to the county. So I think there are other ways that Morningside can fund the Discovery Zone. I don't know monetarily how much they would need to, how many folks they would need to have covered under different funding sources to be able to recoup the cost of their building.
You said this is, oh, sorry.
That's their building or their business model.
They're leasing it until 2022 or? 2020.
I toured them, toured the facility, I think 2 weeks ago, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I'm a firm believer in it, but I don't know anything about integration, reverse integration, but I see the value in it. But I don't set federal guidelines either, or rules. But let me get Gary in real quick.
Yeah.
If they've submitted a plan and it was turned back, does that extend their time frame that they are allowed to submit back? I mean, a new plan. I mean, if the deadline came and go, it came and went, well then, wouldn't they, because they were denied, waiting for a response, I suppose, or does it just all end August 31st?
So we met with the state to try to get more time because we see the point, and the first plan was deemed to be reverse integration. So then, we discussed that with them, and they have not submitted any other plan for a month. They are saying that it does take time to, develop all these pieces, but I also requested that they just send us a very kind of loose outline of what they might propose, and then we would try to work with them, but I still haven't received any idea of what their thoughts are on some sort of solution to this. And DDA was very firm on August 31st as we will no longer reimburse the county for any services in the Discovery Zone. And, for our side at this point, I concur with DDA in their assessment that it is not integrated per the federal guidelines. And so I think that paying for it outside of that would be, create a lot of difficulties.
Is your contact then Jonathan Plager?
Yes.
Okay. Ty, I'll get to you in a minute, Romero.
What was I going to say? I may have lost my thread. Go ahead.
So that is a good distinction in terms of perhaps the argument or the thought process may not be making a judgment whether this program is viable
Right.
or has value to those individuals. It's really what we're dealing with is the strings attached to the federal funding, and the federal funding doesn't recognize this meets the criteria. So really, that is the what I call is some of the strings attached to federal funding. May not necessarily be. I mean, you can have your own perspective, as staff have their own perspective. The setting can provide value to those individuals with developmental disabilities, but really that's not part of the conversation.
Right, it's not the issue.
The issue is how we can probably meet the requirements of federal funding. And that is probably where we are at this juncture. I do have a question, and please feel free to say, no, I don't know. Or I came to knowledge that perhaps there was already a litigation or somebody was litigated on the east side of the state related to this particular activities. But if you don't feel comfortable on that, because I think that was probably the as to why the DDA is taking a closer look at those activities, because on the east side of the state, a different organization was already either litigated or was in the process of being litigated specifically related to this.
Correct. Well, you're right, and I know a little bit about that situation, and I think that did kind of spur some of this further investigation of this particular situation. And I know the situation on the east side is a little bit different, but kind of the theme is the same: integration versus segregation. And on the east side of the state, it was a very segregated environment where only individuals with developmental disabilities were in that space, working in that space. There are some differences. I don't view Morningside as a work site necessarily. It's more of a training site. So there are some differences, but the theme is generally there, the theme of integration. And I do think that heightened kind of the interest in this. And in March, the Developmental Disabilities Administration went and trained case managers on integrated settings per their new management bulletin regarding integrated settings. And some of the complaints that came from the field, I think, were prompted by that webinar and discussion about what is and what isn't an integrated or segregated space.
Do you recall?
Well, I mean, I can imagine, people taking advantage of it, and you just keep people in the discovery zone. You never let. I mean, there should be. I would imagine there would be a limit. You could say, like, driver's training, right? You can do X number of hours, and then that's it. You've got to move to an integrated setting, and that makes sense to me. But it sounds like that's not really for us to decide. It's federal government's decided what they've decided. But what's our decision point, or what's
this is just informational for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gary, go ahead.
But does the program go away then?
It's
if we don't
a
meet certain criteria?
subcomponent of the overall individual supported employment. So there are 8 other pieces to this. There's job development and job coaching and all kinds of other little pieces. So discovery is one small piece, and Morningside can continue to do discovery. It just has to be in the community. And so
Or they don't get the money.
what?
Or they don't get the funding.
Right. We just cannot pay
That-
for services
that's
in the
really what it
discovery
is.
zone as of August 31st. And I do think that there can be some value in that. The concern of ours is, how do we monitor this? How do we ensure individuals aren't getting stuck? So when this came about, we started talking about, how much time is appropriate in a setting such as this, and how fast should people move through, and what would we do if somebody lingers? So there was a lot of questions, but as we started to uncover more and research more, we determined along with the state that this just is not an integrated setting, and unless it's out in the community, we just don't see any way that we could, move it forward as an integrated setting.
Okay.
How much money are we talking about?
In the discovery zone, currently they have about 90 clients in the discovery zone. It's difficult to say in terms of money because people move in and out, and depending, say you go into the discovery zone to learn some kind of janitorial skills, you may be in there an hour a week for the month. So you may have 4 hours for the month, so that would be $70 an hour for Morningside for that individual. So they have about 80 to 90, because it fluctuates in there right now, and 5 hours a month for each individual, so 90 times 5 times 70.
We must have a idea, though, of how much the federal government is saying that they're going to pull back.
Well, it's a 50-50 match, so there would be, right now they have 80 to 90 individuals in the zone. About, we could say, 6 hours a month would be the average for the individual, and $70 an hour is what we pay, so the 50% match would be half of that.
It's 37,000 and then half of that.
Roughly.
So
Okay,
20,000
I was pulling up my
bucks?
calculator. So
18 or 20,000?
18, 20,000. So let's say it's 20,000 just to talk in round numbers. If, one of my questions is, if the federal government has determined that this is not an allowable activity, are we at risk of being found out of compliance and having an auditor say that we have to pay that money back to the feds for time that we paid prior to August 31st?
So I did talk to Developmental Disabilities Administration about that, and I did send them an email right away when they said this space is not integrated, and I said, based on your assessment that it's not integrated, shall we suspend all services as of right now? And they said, no, let's continue the services, and we will pay for the services until
So we have a
August 31st.
commitment to
I
pay.
have
Better
an
save
email.
that email.
Yes, totally save that.
I
because
I sent that
Federal
email.
auditors don't care if
Right.
someone told
And
you the
I-
wrong thing.
Right, and I specifically asked for that email. I also met with the Assistant Secretary of Developmental Disabilities Administration, and she assured me that they were not going to pursue anything prior to August 31st. They weren't interested in that. They said they're just interested in, putting this on the right track at this point.
Well, we're going to hope that the state auditor doing a
Yes.
single audit would have the same approach. So there's that. And then the other question I have is, so if we're talking about $20,000 and the county has the opinion that this is a good program with benefits to the community, and that the complaints that have been received are perhaps not impingement upon that, then is there an opportunity to take the county's DD money, substitute for the federal money, and use that federal money for other purposes?
So, the federal money, so DDA gives us the money, $10, that's it. They pursue the federal match, so we just get the $10. So, but if we were to use that money in another way, it's tagged for direct services only. So we and the case managers at Developmental Disabilities authorize the number of hours. And so we would just have to return it to the state because likely we would not be able to use it. And
We don't have sufficient demand.
right, Because they use that algorithm to determine the clients, and the clients have to have DDA eligibility. So there are lots of limits to kind of who gets through the door, and then they have to be assessed for supported employment, and they have to get a specific number of hours, and then they have to ask for exceptions for additional hours. So we likely would use a little bit of it, but we would likely return some of that money unless we gained more clients. And we do have a staff member out trying to work with families to make them eligible for DDA. So that is something that we are doing. Could we use some of the millage funds? We could. We have a lot of concerns with that. One of the main concerns is if we kind of set a precedence, if we allow Morningside to have a discovery zone, then what about our other agencies? And if we do that, we kind of penciled out some rough figures, and the monitoring alone would cost us about $1,200 a month just to be able to monitor Morningside in staff time. Because we would want to be looking at, are people getting stuck? Are we having duplication of services? Is this an appropriate number of hours for this person's acuity? And all those things we currently do with the coaching services and all the other services, but we would have to have an additional layer of monitoring for this piece. And if other agencies started doing that, I don't think it would be sustainable for us.
So then what I'm hearing is that should Morningside not come forward with a viable plan, then the county's contract with Morningside will most likely be reduced by about $20,000 roughly.
I'm not so sure it would, because I think there is duplication right now, and I think there are services, some of the individuals, what happens is they go to DVR. DDA is the funder of last resort, so they should be going to DVR first, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and then they get training and skills under the DVR contract, and DVR does allow simulated work. So Discovery Zone is appropriate for DVR funding. So our thought is that a lot of those individuals that are currently seeking DDA funds through the county could probably be seeking DVR funds. One reason that agencies don't like to go to DVR first is it's outcome-based, so it's performance-based, and our funding is not. They bill us for discovery, they bill us for job coaching, but DVR demands that this person get a job, this person complete an internship. So typically they'll try to come to us for funding first, and we monitor that, but we can't catch every situation in which that happens. But Liz and I were discussing the high number of people in the Discovery Zone and looking at whether or not a significant portion should be in Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And our thought is that, a lot of them should be. I was also surprised to see how many high school transition students were there when we've already paid for that service. So it will reduce their funding, but I think that it should be reduced regardless, because some of the things are duplicative and should be happening in another way.
Thank you. Romero, you want to wrap this up then?
Yeah, and as Jennifer explained, you probably see some of the potential financial impacts that perhaps may be less than what we thinking, hopefully. But also on your agenda this afternoon is to give the Director of Public Health and Social Services the authority to start signing those contracts, which goes back to what Jennifer stated in terms of all the 8 different activities this funding will continue to fund to Morningside. So Morningside will continue to receive funding on the other activities they provide to developmental disabilities individuals. And again, I will continue to work on this. This is just informational to you as this issue came to your attention.
And we're very willing to work with Morningside on solutions. Jonathan and Liz and I and Shelley have been in conversations and communications, and we definitely want this to work out. They provide a lot of great services. They do wonderful things. They have individual supported employment, community inclusion, and high school transition. So they're providing 3 different services.
Right.
And this is just one small component within that service. And and they understand integrated settings, and I think they definitely want to ensure that they're one of the leaders in moving forward with best practices. And so I think as we continue to have conversations and try to work with them, we will figure this piece out, but I understand their frustration.
Good. Jennifer, Liz, Shelley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to jump down to agenda item number 4, apprenticeship program, because we have a department director been sitting here all morning with, I'm sure, other things to do.
Commissioners, this is a follow-up to a conversation that you had maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And the conversation was centered on apprenticeship programs that we have here in the county. And at that point, we provided some information that in fact we do have an apprenticeship program included in the contracts that are value $1 million and more. And that's a setting of 10% of the number of hours the particular contract will require. So you may recall during that conversation, you tasked the director to go back and look at what other jurisdictions perhaps are doing. And I think the conversation was whether the 10% is adequate or not. So the Director of Public Works is here to give you a follow-up to that briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer Walker, Thurston County Public Works Director. So a couple of items, just clarifying again that when we talk about public works projects, we're per the ordinance that was passed in the code, we're specifically talking about all construction projects for the county that are $1 million or more. In this case, it's generally going to be public works and facilities, central services. For our Department for Public Works, we are averaging about 800 to 1,400 training hours a year. Central Services noted that they have fewer projects that meet that criteria, and so they're averaging less than 1 project a year that falls under that requirement. For other agencies in the area, both the City of Lacey and City of Tumwater do not require apprentice requirements on their public works projects. The City of Olympia, they do that on a project-by-project basis, based off of the discretion of the project engineer. And then I also checked up north, and Pierce County does not have an apprentice goals, but they do have minority business enterprises and women business enterprise goals, but no apprentice goals. Did you have any other specific questions
I do.
about it?
Yeah, go ahead.
And
Yeah.
why do other jurisdictions not do it? Because, and there's discretion apparently if they want to do it. So why is it that we have it mandatory, I guess?
That would be difficult for me to answer.
Yeah.
As to why the other agencies don't.
I mean, is it a cost savings? That's what I'm thinking about.
I can't speak for the other agencies. I will say that the reason that for us it's maybe averaging a project or 2 a year for Public Works is because most of our projects we have some type of federal funding involved, and when we have federal money or other granting agencies at providing money, they have specific requirements as to what we can spend money on or not.
And that's where it falls within that 10%.
When it is just county funds, correct.
What about when the federal funds are involved?
When the federal funds fall, they will set their own limits for us.
And what is
and
that
goals.
generally?
It will,
Every one of them varies, or?
well, it depends. We haven't, I think Yelm Highway was the last project that we had requirements for training. Otherwise, we have other requirements. I think the county manager wants to add something.
So when it's federal funds involved in any particular transportation projects, the state, which is the recipient of the federal funds, they have to meet the minimum percentage across the state. So as they have federal funds on their projects, they can meet those percentages. Sometimes only by their projects, and sometimes it's not a requirement by local jurisdictions to go ahead and do so. For instance, in some years the state doesn't have a robust construction season, then they put into the local jurisdictions to come up to meet those requirements. And that's how answering your question, it varies in terms of the requirements of the percentages that each local jurisdiction will have to meet, whether it's apprenticeship or what are called the DBE, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. Those are the two elements the federal government requires when we use federal funds. But again, the percentages vary depending whether the state has met the requirements at the federal level on their own, or perhaps they haven't. And that's when it comes out to the local jurisdictions. That make sense?
Well, it does, but I'm just trying to figure out what's the benefit of doing more or less, or is there a benefit?
Well, and I can give you the history in Pierce County. The DBE sometimes in some projects required by the state, sometimes was 0, sometimes was 8%. Back then, and I was involved in that because at that point, Pierce County saw the value of bringing disadvantaged business enterprises as part of the business that Pierce County provided. So it was an internal action by the council at that point to make that as a requirement on all projects in Pierce County. And I believe the probably Thurston County saw the value back then when this ordinance was passed. They wanted to emphasize the apprenticeship as part of our public works projects. So it's more of a value added to an organization as to how they see as a benefit to the individuals. Because if you ask my personal opinion, absolutely on point. Because we need to provide adequate training for the next individuals to do the same jobs down the road. Is a succession planning they will need to implement. And for me, and this is just my humble opinion, that is the value added to this approach.
More right this second. Go ahead, Ty.
So one thing I wasn't as interested in other jurisdictions because I'd kind of looked around, but what I thought that we were getting feedback on was kind of our 10% program. Is it controversial? Has it caused problems for our local contract? You said it's only 1 or 2 projects a year. Is it hard to report? Are there any? Because I mean, I'm looking at 15% because I'm assured by everybody I talk to that that's kind of designated as the sweet spot between you really don't want to go above that because then it does start to create problems. And it's just, my understanding is that's kind of the sweet spot. So I was hoping to kind of hear whether not that there's something about our 10% program that would make me feel like 15% would not be warranted, or it's going smooth and great. And that I was more interested in how our program works in Thurston
Sure.
County.
So we, like I said, it's on 1 or 2 projects a year. The general sense is that for the contractor, it requires more oversight for them to manage that program when training goals are added to the contract.
Okay. Well, and that's why that's why we limit it to big projects. The state I don't understand. I'm not an expert in how the federal funding piece works, but I know that it's right in state law that it's for all state projects over a certain threshold. And I think it's 1 million, and unless it's a transportation project, then it's 2 million actually.
Yeah, and they've changed it a little bit too. They actually are just making some changes that are going to go into effect in 2020 as well. Where
In terms of the thresholds.
Increasing the threshold.
But the 15% has been the number for all. So to my view, the contractors that work on those types of projects at that scale are very familiar with that requirement. To answer Commissioner Edwards' question of what do we get out of it, what's the point? you know, the point is to try to maximize the public benefit, community benefit to the expenditure of public dollars through workforce training, as the county manager explained, as well as it's one way you can cut costs through, it's basically an exception to prevailing wage requirements.
I don't have the data to say that it does or doesn't cut costs. I do think that the emphasis certainly is more in the training. At least that's how we've looked at it.
So, yeah.
So I think that was a good, perhaps lead into my question is we do have a 10% apprenticeship program requirement for projects above $1 million. The question that I have for the board is, are you in the position of entertaining an option to change any of those requirements at this point?
Would it be beneficial to have it 15% or 5%? Where would be the benefit? I mean, if we were going to make a change, which way would we want to go to be more cost-effective, more efficient for the taxpayers, recognizing a long-term job market as well, skills?
And like Ty said, or the Commissioner Menser, that sweet spot. If there's only
Well,
one or two projects a year.
Yeah, I mean, that's based on my research. That's what labor groups would say. That's what the state apprenticeship program director staff would say, because I had to sit down with them. It's what the state's adopted. It's what certain counties, like Snohomish County, has adopted, and so that's my position. And I may be the Lone Ranger, and that's fair. I accept that, but because of the my desire to create maximum public benefit out of public dollar expenditures, and we're looking at a pretty significant one potentially in upcoming, I want to make sure that we're doing what we can to maximize benefit, and I would make a motion to increase without any other changes, because understand that our own ordinance is based on some other ordinances that create exceptions and exemptions for where it's inappropriate or burdensome. They're exempted.
Correct.
So with no other changes to our ordinance, I would move our 10% to 15.
So where I look at this is understanding the different jurisdictions have different standards or policies. And for example, Olympia does it on a project-by-project basis. That allows them the greatest flexibility. But also, when I think of that, then it would come back, we would be picking winners or losers. We would have to go through more. It's not just a static baseline policy, which I favor. Rather than
I think the approach that we have in having it documented, I think is a sound approach. And I do think that it's at a minimum of 10%. And then under the 15.20.080 exceptions and waivers, the director may reduce or waive the apprentice labor hours upon his or her determination that, and then there's 4 different areas that we consider and look at. So I think that there's some flexibility built in there.
Okay.
To be able to manage it.
And but just based on the discussion we've had now and the discussion we had on this topic a couple weeks ago, I'm in favor of increasing it to 15%.
I don't think that I am, and the reason I don't think I am is I think we've got adequate discretion, it sounds like, from what you just read. And I don't think that government has the best history in the world about doing things in the most efficient manner, and so I just don't know if this contributes to it or not, to that efficiency. And I kind of always want to be headed towards efficiency, so I can't say that I'm in favor of making a change at all. I probably don't know enough about it either.
Yeah.
But right now, I would say stay the same would be my position.
And with what deference to what you said about having the safety measures in place already, even with an increase, those remain.
Correct.
Those exemptions.
Correct.
And I look down the road, succession planning, like Romero said, I look at that down the road, training a future workforce.
So
Okay.
what I'm hearing is I have the majority of the board to bring a formal proposal for your final consideration of 15%. This county code revision, I will require a public hearing, so we'll bring those a resolution for your consideration to set a public hearing and then go through the process.
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
TCOM, you reckon that won't take very long?
Hopefully not.
Agenda item number 3, TCOM agreement.
So I believe I briefed you a couple of weeks ago in terms of the TCOM 911. As a result of the past legislation, they allows for an additional 0.2% of a sales tax to fund their communications plan, which is really going to bring the analog system here in Thurston County to a more digital system. And everything, I think this came to in front of us when the train derailment happened in December 2017. And because it created a significant issue as to how first responders from Pierce County and Thurston County were communicating among themselves. That was a big lessons learned. The executive director TCOM 911 introduced a piece of legislation this legislative session, which the legislature approved to increase 0.2% of the sales tax. During that conversation, the question was whether the board could have held a public hearing. That was, I worked with our prosecuting attorney, and it's not required a public hearing for you to consider an action to put this ballot on the November general election of 2019. The TCOM 911 Board of Directors passed a resolution to goes 2019-11, formally requesting the Board of County Commissioners to consider putting this measure on the November ballot 2019. I have worked with your prosecuting attorney. I have a draft resolution that will be bringing to your attention on the July 23rd Board of County Commissioners for you to exercise your option whether you want to support this or not. Within those requirements of you considering putting this measure on the November 2018 ballot, there is a little bit of one step that each jurisdiction needs to take before you consider taking an affirmative action on this. And this is related to the current agreement that we have, and I provided you a copy of that. This agreement is with TCOM 911 and all the different jurisdictions within. And that includes Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, Yelm, Tenino, Towns Bucura, Rainier, the Southeast Thurston Regional Fire Authority, West Thurston Regional Fire Authority, the Thurston County Fire Districts number 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 12, 13, 16, 17. And each one of those jurisdictions, including TCOM 911, needs to take an affirmative action to affirm the terms and conditions of this agreement. The city of Tumwater has already taken that action, and I received a letter on that. And that is a condition that each of those parties of this agreement needs to take a formal action to affirm. This agreement was signed by all the parties with TCOM 911 back in 2010. And I believe the terms and conditions are workable. We have been working with TCOM 911 on those terms. And I'm not suggesting for you to go and try to open this agreement because there's no time. I strongly suggest to the board to affirm the terms and conditions of this agreement today.
Okay, and you're the rep on that board.
Is an RCW specifically that states, and that's what Elizabeth stated to me. And I relayed this to the executive director at TCOM 911 2 weeks ago, and he's working on making sure each jurisdiction take an affirmative action, just affirming the terms and conditions of the existing contract.
Got it. Okay. Commissioner Edwards.
You're asking that we do something today instead of the 22nd of July?
Yes, because I need to capture this conversation today and put it on the resolution that you will be considering on the July 23rd.
And that
23rd.
meets the legal requirements
Yes.
of that,
Yeah.
of that document?
Yeah.
I guess what I would say, not only did it become apparent that we needed to make this change, but if we don't make this change and do it this way, then there'll have to be a rate structure put together, and each of the individual member agencies will have to pay for the change separately. So it's kind of do it now or do it later through a different structure, and this seemed to be the fairest way to do it at this point in time. I had held out hope as we moved along that we were maybe going to get some assistance, maybe Homeland Security, federal assistance of some type or another to offset the price, but doesn't look like that's come to fruition. Right. So I would make a motion, and I did not attend this meeting or participate in the vote on this particular issue. It was all the other members of the board. And so it was a unanimous vote, and I would make a motion that we move forward today with this.
So, and I don't want to come across that I put you on the spot as a board to making sure you make a determination of this very complex agreement. But my intent is not to have a conversation with you whether the terms and conditions of this agreement are workable. My intent of you is for you to affirm the terms and conditions that already are in place. And that affirmation is what I need to include on the ordinance.
I don't have any problem with what I've heard so far. I just feel like I'm missing a couple of connection points. So what does this agreement say with regard to money and charges and what Commissioner Edwards said about?
So what Commissioner Edwards is stating, I believe, is something needs to be done. If the board doesn't consider to put this on the November ballot for the voters to vote on additional revenue, then the next option will be to go ahead with the project, and the cost of this project will be sent out to all the users in all the fire districts, all the sheriff's office, the police departments. In each of those jurisdictions will have to pay a fee associated with that investment. And I believe that is what Commissioner Edwards is stating.
You're saying that that's the plan, that would be the alternative to
Yes,
us.
that could be.
Yeah,
That could
that's
be plan B.
that's the plan B. If the board doesn't put this on the November ballot, you can put it next year.
I thought from what I've heard, we were all in favor of putting it on the ballot. So this is just, and then this agreement does what? It allocates that money?
This agreement is just it's just the terms and conditions in which we are working with GCOM 911 since 2010. Okay. So nothing changes. I just need an affirmative action by you that you are affirming the terms and conditions of this contract agreement.
So it sounds like the need to affirm the interlocal agreement is driven by something in the state law regarded to the ballot measure, not something within the agreement itself.
I got you.
Because this agreement was written in a way that it would never end as long as it's working.
So we're just following a process to get it on the ballot.
Because because before the board, thank you, Robin, before the board considers putting on the ballot, each of those parties need to affirm.
Okay.
Making sure that all of us are on the same page.
And that's how we just got that letter from Tumwater.
Yeah, I just got a letter, the city of Tumwater has taken an affirmative action to affirm the terms and conditions of the contract.
And
GCOM 911 already took an affirmative action to affirm the terms of the contract. And I believe all the jurisdictions, including the county, are in the process
Yeah.
of doing so.
We're just one of the jurisdictions.
Yep.
Okay, I'm good.
Thank you. That's all I want. Appreciate it.
Josh, come on up. Do we have you on the agenda at all? You're just listening? Okay. Then let's move on to number 5, urban cities.
Something in here to see if it on it.
Yeah, I put this item on your agenda. It's just to give, I guess, the board, Commissioner Messner, Commissioner Edwards, a little bit of background as to the meeting that Commissioner Hutchins and myself attended maybe 2 weeks ago. Maybe you can start providing your perspective, Commissioner, and I'll go get my notes.
Get your notes. It was a well-attended meeting out at Lacey City Hall in the chambers, and each city was represented along with staff, city managers, planning folks as well, and I believe attorneys. And we talked about taking their urban cities ad hoc committee and formalizing it into, there's no new name, but into some type of an urban cities or urban community or county type. We're all working together in working toward resolving the homeless, not resolving it, but assisting in folks that are homeless, and who would share it. What would the expectations be? What would it be called? What would the rules of engagement be? Those types of the operational piece of it. And at this point, since the county's been invited formally to the table to assist with conversation and such, the chair currently is going to remain Jim Cooper, Councilman Jim Cooper from Olympia, until we get more nuts and bolts hammered out. And so from there, I'm going to turn to Romero then to kind of finish that up.
So at that meeting, the group discussed what is the vision of this group, short term and long term. In the short term, obviously, was how the potential mitigation side, and what will be the roles and responsibilities, and this group will be the right forum in which those discussions can occur. And I believe all the members attending that they were in agreement that perhaps that will be the right forum to have that regional conversations. But also, the vision was what this group can do on the long term. And the long term is also how the affordable housing strategies can be implemented at a regional level. Again, I think the believe that was the right forum as to how those discussions could be. So that's how the vision was established, I believe. Certainly, there was not a discussion of the level of details in terms of the cost, who pays for that, who's going to operate that. That is a discussion that comes later. There was set a little bit of an expectation, and perhaps the group would like to have somebody in a document in place, or perhaps a mitigation site operational within 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an expectation put on the table. Commissioner Hutchins, I believe, stated that perhaps we need to make sure that we don't set unrealistic expectations as we move forward, because as he previously stated, you may be considering today an emergency ordinance that allows the some mitigation sites to take place in unincorporated zone of the county. But the operations aspect, which is a new local agreement, will require further conversations, because that's where the details needs to be worked out. And just laid out in a way to all the team members that perhaps that may be an aggressive schedule, but that schedule.
Thank you, and that was the word I used, an aggressive time frame, because the eyes of the county and beyond are going to be watching. And I thought 90 days was a bit aggressive, since we hadn't even discussed the size or the number of participants at a camp, whether it's going to be 30, 40, or 100. And we want to set something that's realistic and sustainable and achievable without overburdening staff and stepping into something where we can't keep our head above water.
And that was the follow-up conversation, I believe, in terms of, the side that right now has been considering the Martin Way and Carpenter Road, I'm sorry.
Right, and all the logistics, like you say, the operational pieces still really need to be hammered out. Management, nonprofit, the monetary. Bless you.
So did I miss everything? Right.
All those operational pieces.
So
anyway, need to be hammered out.
I think the conversation was what Commissioner Hutchins stated. The in-local agreement. That's what all the details in terms of law enforcement response, who's going to pay for what, and who's going to operate the site. That's really where the conversation and the details is going to require a lot of work and effort, not just by the county, but also the other jurisdictions involved.
And signatures.
And the discussion also said, just because the potential site is close to 3 acres, that it will not be prudent at this point to get to the point of utilizing all the 3 acres for this potential mitigation site, if that is the case, but maybe start small. Whatever small that is,
Start manageable.
So the conversation was, and I believe Commissioner Hutchins stated the representation, and Commissioner Hutchins has attended, and I'd like to have an affirmation by the board whether Commissioner Hutchins will continue to be the representative of the board. That's a decision that I'd like to have from you, and also who will be his backup in a way, whether you consider for me to be the backup, Commissioner Hutchins, or you would like to probably one of the other seatmates could be the backup while Commissioner Hutchins may not be able to attend. From an administrative point of view, I'm going to make myself available just to attend and listen and hopefully participate on that, but not necessarily in a formal setting because they're requested to be an elected official to participate on that.
Yeah.
That's a decision point, so we'll pause this and entertain that discussion, then I'll give you the rest of the...
And do you remember, I don't recall, when the next meeting is?
I'll give you some.
July, sometime next month, okay.
I-
Thoughts? Go ahead.
I guess, how come we wouldn't want the chair of the board to be our representative?
I just want to affirm that because I don't want to be
No, we just need
presumptuous.
to formalize it if that's what's
I don't
going
want
to
to be
happen.
presumptuous that you are okay with Commissioner Hutchins representing this effort.
I'm fine with that, but my question's on backup. We're meeting the group is meeting monthly?
Yeah, it's,
And do
it's
we,
2 steps on this. The what I call the governance of elected officials will meet once a month, and I believe it's on the third Thursday of every month. We're still on that process to determine what that is.
in the evening, correct?
It starts at 5 o'clock. And also within that context,
5:30. Is it 5?
I believe. Anyways, it's
Okay, go
from
ahead.
5 to 6:30, because at 6:30 is
Council.
strictly just to, all of us get out of the lazy city council chambers because they have their meeting. So that's from 5 to 6:30. But that schedule is still being worked out. But
You're
also in
right, you're
between,
right.
the conversation was that obviously that they don't want to, I guess the group discussed, they don't want to wait until those meetings occur to make decisions because a lot of work needs to be done in between. So it was a decision perhaps to name a subcommittee of staff members. Each of the jurisdiction will start meeting and carry the water in a way. So when those meetings occur on a monthly basis, the governance structure will be in the position to make decisions and provide direction.
Is the concept there's one per jurisdiction?
The concept one and a backup.
And then are we talking about Lot, Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County as the 4
Yes, sir.
members?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm good with the chair, and I'd volunteer to be the alternate if.
Yeah.
that was-
So the only thing that we need to be careful that if for any instance the 2 of you would like to attend at the same time, you need to let me know because we need to announce at the special meeting. And we need to announce, and the public needs to be invited. You know the whole
Bro,
scenario.
I would not
yeah.
attend unless,
So-
if I were the alternate, I would not attend unless I was,
I just
chair
want to
could
make
not
sure
attend.
that those are the rules of engagement.
I have
Now,
lots
it
of-
looks like,
lots of board
you talk about
assignments.
July 11 is the next meeting.
Is that?
It's the second
I
Thursday.
haven't checked the schedule. Obviously, I have not been invited because I'm not
Oh,
an
okay.
official member.
Well, and Shelley and Keeley have been
July
attending
11.
as well. And July 11, I'll be at a conference, so I won't be here.
I'm available if you want. Is that okay? Okay.
So you're getting thumbs up then.
Yeah, so Commissioner Hutchins is the main representative, and Commissioner Minzer is the backup.
Did you have more on that topic?
Yes,
I
if
knew
I
it.
may, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I have questions too, so.
And also there was, since those meetings are set up every month, again, it was, there's enough energy right now that it was a concern that perhaps waiting until every month to have those discussions, the energy will be drifting away. So the group decided to form a subcommittee of staff members. They will start working on some of the details, and again, it will bring those items to this group for direction, approval, or whatever decision needs to take place. So from the county, the representatives of the technical subcommittee is Keeley and Shelley. And I believe City of Olympia provided
Colin DeForest.
Colin DeForest and somebody else, and each of their jurisdictions is going to be sending the representatives to the subcommittee.
And you will not be attending then, or are you going to be?
I'll
You're not going
try
be?
to attend, so if I will ask to include me on the calendar, so I keep it in my calendar, and I will
Okay.
attend, and I will make myself available to answer any questions. Mainly an assistance to you and assistance to Commissioner Menser if need be. That's really the role that I plan to take. We discussed about the need of having a communications plan in place. That will be imperative because, as we know, we already have some feedbacks, not just from the county's perspective, but all the jurisdictions. And how we can probably start outlining some of the proposed plans when and if we get to a potential mitigation site. So that was discussed as well.
To include the exit plan.
Yeah, in the exit plan, thank you. Discuss the exit plan is ultimately the ultimate goal, as discussed at the group, was to have those individuals not to be permanently housed on this mitigation plan, but provided enough resources for them to eventually get into affordable or low-income housing, to have a permanent housing. That is really the ultimate goal. And there was a little bit of interesting interactions within that. That perhaps that was too much by a council member. But again, from my point of view, never lose sight of the ultimate objective, and along the way we can see what alternatives and objectives we can put within intermediate steps. That's what I have in terms of the feedback that I get.
Okay, go ahead, Ty.
So on the mitigation site, I heard one of the candidates along the trail talk about it as a stabilization site. I think that's really better terminology, or that appeals to me more. It's more descriptive of what the concept is, so just throwing that out there. I might start using that word, and if I do, you know what I'm talking about. Mitigation really doesn't seem to be describing anything in a way that people can understand. My second question was, I had heard maybe a month or so ago that Lacey staff was taking a stab at an interlocal agreement regarding the stabilization, potential stabilization site. Is that something that was talked about at the meeting?
No.
No, okay. So that may be happening, may not, you don't know. I had been told that there was a proposed, naming the group as like a regional housing task force or something of that nature. Did that get discussed?
It was not discussed in terms of, according to my notes, it was never a concurrence as to how the new name should be.
Okay.
There should be a name.
It should be a name.
My only other point I wanted to make was that I'm really excited about the potential of such a group, and besides the stabilization / mitigation site, I would really like this group to address the approach that we could take toward the sales tax piece that was passed by the legislature, where the local jurisdictions are going to be able to sweep away 0.1% of sales tax for affordable housing. And this group, I think, should talk about pooling that money and coordinating it and leveraging it and getting maximum regional community value out of it. And that's the perfect forum to have that kind of strategy talk. So I guess I'm just looking at the chair now, since he'll be the rep.
That topic came up, but it wasn't discussed to any resolution, but it was broached.
I'd hope you guys would keep that on one of your kind of recurring action items for this group, because I think there's a lot of potential there, but it's going to take coordination and hard work to get it, to maximize it.
Talking about the exit plan, if you will, did we ever get any successful conversion up at Camp Coyote with individuals? I mean, it seems like a lot of those folks have been living there a long time, and it's turned into permanent residence without any real benefit of treatment, whether it be mental health, drug abuse. And I don't think we have any success stories, and maybe I'm just not aware of them, that go with this temporary housing and then moving on to integrated into the community from that. And so that's a big concern of mine, that we don't have an adequate exit plan that covers treatment for both addiction and mental health, so that we can have a success story that goes along with this whole thing. And am I not aware? Have you got a success story up in Camp Coyote that we can refer to, that here's how we want to do it, or do we want to say here's how we don't want to do it?
It's both yes and yes.
Yeah,
there are success stories, but there are people that have been living there for years.
Yeah.
So I don't have the numbers to answer your specific question, Commissioner.
But could we get a briefing from Camp Coyote?
Determine the success, I think, is perhaps in the eyes of the beholder, as to how that camp was successful or not. I can probably give you my personal perspective.
Well, I just want to say from a factual perspective that I toured it in the winter. I don't know the stats, but they have case management stat coordinators right there, and that's why that's a more expensive way to go about it, because it's a more established community with everybody there is connected to services and case management. So I mean, it's very successful. If you go there, it's been there a long time, and I'd move in there. It's got a beautiful community center that's clean and pristine, and a beautiful kitchen, and they've got bathrooms and showers, and everything is absolutely pristine.
And it's still in your district.
And it's still in my district. Yeah, I could do it. But they have. Then, in fact, just when I was just touring there, I think it was January, they were just adding yet another. They'd finagled some funding for yet another staff person to help with the case management and connection to treatment. So they're really doing a good job of that. And they're trying to open 2 others, was my understanding at that time, one in Shelton and one in another part of Thurston County. They're working on funding mechanisms for other villages. But I think maybe your question is, are people there and then they move on to something else? Mm-hmm. And Camp Quixote's a little different in that way. It's
a little different and I don't know if probably victims of their own success in a way, that perhaps the residents have remained there for a long period of time. And some of the lessons learned, perhaps, for instance, the Plum Street, tiny village is not the same concept as Quixote Village. It's different. It's a step down. So it does allow for temporary housing with support services that eventually those individuals will move on to a permanent housing. So In defining success on that, and again, I think my humble opinion is on the eyes of the beholder. But I don't have the numbers, whether how many individuals have come through that and how many individuals have moved on to permanent housing.
It did start as a tent city downtown years ago, and then they came up to what it is today. And they do have success stories, Jill does, of people that have been used it at temporary and then moved into permanent housing, but several that have stayed on. And if you want a briefing, we can have a briefing. So we get stories, we can get numbers. But here is noon, so I want to keep going.
Keep going.
Robin?
I was going to chime in that Quixote Village is permanent housing.
It had not.
It is.
It had not
It wasn't in the
been.
past, but it is now. It's permanent. It's considered permanent supportive housing.
And do you know when that changed?
But it originally was transitional housing.
It
That was
was-
the idea.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was
That
the
was
idea,
the
but
con-
evolved
was-
into.
That was the concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the funding model, when they took housing authority vouchers, became a permanent supportive housing model. So people can live in that as long as they continue to qualify for what is commonly known as Section 8 or project-based vouchers.
So that's federally
That was-
funded then?
Yes.
The vouchers are indeed federal funding.
Just one real quick
County
thing. We do have
gave that property.
religious groups that have their missions and such, and Salvation Army, where they have people that they refer to as success stories that have worked through, they came in kind of at the bottom of their life cycle, if you will, and have gotten fixed up, I guess, and went through treatment and have become success stories in their own right. And that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Right.
There's
that
a-
type of a
There's a few, I think, Shelley can correct me if I'm wrong, but actually just right here that have gone from mitigation site to Plum Street and on.
Yes.
I don't know how many that is, but we have some just here in the last 6 months that could meet that criteria, I think, of what you're saying.
But sitting here right here and now, and this is the topic we're talking about, urban cities, I'm not interested in some type of a permanent housing under this ordinance that we're going to be discussing this afternoon.
No, but perhaps, this group can probably start developing regional strategies as to how permanent housing can be developed. And I think that's
Right.
what Commissioner Menser stated, whether it can pool the resources of the additional sales tax,
Right.
how those decisions can be made at the regional level that
Right.
could
And
address.
the permanent housing would be a resource for these folks that we're
I
assisting.
can tell you, I'm not in favor of this from the standpoint of, I don't want to have permanent housing, as you
Right.
said, where we end up with individuals from outside of this area that are not from our community, and they're going to take up space, and it'd be,
Especially
it would limit
Kansas.
our ability to help our own people.
Yeah. Anything further
No, on this
on
topic.
that? Okay. Thank you, Shelley. Now we get down to public testimony.
Yeah, briefly, I know that it's over noon. And two pieces of information. Last week, we received a public records request from Mr. Pettit related to the courthouse related to specific cost estimates. And we're in the process of submitting a written response, hopefully today at noon. I've been working with, and on the letter, so that will be, but I'm not planning to bring this afternoon, but I just want to give you an indication since you received that letter from Mr. Pettit last week as well.
I received one addressed to you.
Yeah, and
I just got a chart that he's going to bring to the hearing. Is this different?
I have not seen the chart, so I
saw
don't know
the
what
chart,
he's talking
yeah.
about.
The chart, I think the chart is, from what I could tell, is accurate, and I'm glad he's bringing it. It's basically just going through different property values, and then like he's just totaling up like what you'd pay for the courthouse project. So if you had a $200,000 house, then your property tax per year, totaling it up so people can see what their total contribution to it would be at every level, a whole bunch of different levels of property value.
Oh, okay.
So it seemed actually like, unlike some of the other information you provided, which I thought was somewhat misleading, this seemed like a straightforward calculation and compilation of
Oh,
information.
that will be interesting.
He said
to
he'll
see.
have a blow-up of it for the meeting.
So anyways, we'll plan to respond that to Mr. Pettit, hopefully at noon. We'll send that written response. And also attached to your packet is a proposed response to Ms. Mrs. Dilworth. And she provided testimony to you related to her particular property. And I think the testimony that she provided to you maybe 3 weeks ago, when she said she will follow up, sending you specific questions on the specific emails, she did that. And attached to your packet in the back is proposed responses to her questions. I strongly encourage the commissioners not to individually respond to those questions on your individual emails. I will probably recommend for you to have your director of CPED respond to those questions on your behalf, because those questions were the same to each one of you. And because I don't believe that it's appropriate for you to respond individually to Ms. Dilworth, because it's related to an operations aspect of the business. And I believe your director of CPED is more than capable to act on your behalf on those terms.
Thank you.
Can we have this? Has this gone out?
Not yet.
Could we have like?
Yep.
I just like to look at the responses.
Yeah, is the responses, I'm not saying that we're going to be sending that response today. I was going to outline this afternoon that we have responses, and the director of CPED will be responding on your behalf. That's the only thing that I'm going to be stating this afternoon.
That sounds good.
Yeah, because I want to read it and digest it and such.
Yep.
Got it.
That's all I have for you.
On that topic, since Josh is here, I noticed one of the main things that got this going was cutting trees or something there.
Right here
Yeah.
is the chronology of the issues.
Of issues that took place.
Yeah.
Was there a building on that property? Does anybody-
Right here, we'll give you all that information chronologically as to the issues related to Ms. Dilworth's property.
Well,
And,
I do have a question, though. What the question is that under hazard, we got to ordinance something about hazardous trees. You can take down all those trees that could fall on your building, I guess. That's why I asked the building question. And then
That's a
then
lot
the
of
rest
hazard
of it.
trees.
Huh?
That's a lot of hazard trees.
Well, no, it's more than
you look
that,
at-
because I think what happened was, all the trees are gone, right? So 5,000 are allowed to be, no, the trees that'll reach the building are allowed to be taken. Then the 5,000 feet comes into play.
But as long
there.
as,
Is that right?
as long as an arborist made a determination.
I don't think the ordinance says arborist has to make the determination. I'm curious about that.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but my
It's
understanding
kind of
is
vague.
As you're
my
coming up,
understanding is somebody needs to make a determination that it's a dangerous tree.
Right, and
It
did you have
looked
something to
though
add?
that the violation was cleared.
I'm just curious
Okay.
about that particular issue.
Is this something we need to discuss now?
Yeah, we don't have to do it right now. No, we're over time, I know that, so.
We'll bring back that information as to how hazardous trees could be removed from a property.
And the arborist
point of
issue.
discussion.
And the only thing, Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, the only thing I'd add to the great synopsis from the county manager is that CPED and our planning manager, Brett Burris, has been working with the citizen and will continue to work with the citizen on all the items that you see within this chronology and within the responses. We've actually provided those to the citizen verbally. She's working with us. It may not preclude her from coming in and talking with you at the 2 p.m. board meeting, but do know that we have been and will continue to work with this citizen, as we do with all, in a professional manner based on code and ordinance.
And the letter that you're referring to that's going to go out, it's attached to this? Chronology?
The responses and the chronology is attached to your packet.
Okay, good. So I'll read that
So
over
the-
lunch.
So what my request was, I believe you agreed for the CPED director to respond on your behalf on the questions that Ms. Dilworth submitted to you.
I take it this is a draft letter, is it marked
Yeah,
draft?
it's draft responses.
Draft,
Please
I mean,
review
it's
them.
marked draft, so it's
If you
not-
have any additional information, please send it
just worried
to
about
myself
becoming part of the
or
record,
Josh.
that's all.
But again, I will outline this afternoon, your director will respond on your behalf to her questions.
Okay.
Two comments. One is thank you guys, because we all have seen that emotions are running high in this particular instance, so I really appreciate you working with this citizen and doing the best you can with what the rules are. And then I second the request for maybe a briefing about our tree policy, because I've had a number of citizens, mostly from Steamboat Island for some reason, who have wanted to discuss this with me, and I confused myself and wrapped my head in circles trying to compare ours to, there's board feet, and then Olympia talks about trees, and then somebody else talks about meter. Trying to figure out, are we different than Lacey and Tumwater and Olympia and everyone else? Are we the same? Are we more liberal? Are we more restrictive? I have had trouble making heads or tails of it, and the hazard tree issue, I think we could use an overview of where we're at on that.
Acknowledged.
Whenever it's convenient for CPEDs.
Point taken.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lastly,
Oh,
just
yes,
one last
of course,
item.
yeah.
There is a request from Snohomish County for the county, Thurston County, to provide a letter of support on a grant they're trying to pursue related to regional catastrophic planning grant. And this is a coordination with the emergency management departments between Thurston County and Snohomish County. It is a good grant opportunity, and for all of us to benefit from Snohomish County. As you may remember, they have a great experience in terms of emergency response. Mm-hmm. So this is very, no commitment to the county in terms of any matching funds or any. It's just a support on the Snohomish County's emergency services application. So if you're okay, I can probably add your electronic signatures to this. And again, there is no commitments, financial commitments on this letter to the county.
They're seeking federal money?
Yep.
Are we also going to be trying to get money out of that pot?
Well, absolutely. And the Snohomish County is taking the lead, but if they receive the grant, it will be a coordinated
It'll be a benefit
effort.
to all concerned.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm okay with that. Signatures. Are you?
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
We'll be back in a couple hours.